Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable. See playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 2441, Go Back Home. Seeing the expression on Iris' face, Roche couldn't help holding her hand tightly. After Nicholas had been defeated, the Dongfang clan was bound to be in great trouble. Roche was able to clear his mind. As far as he was aware, the Luo clan had a deep grudge against the alliance of powerful clans. Perhaps, Zhen didn't bring about any turmoil on the Dongfang clan's floating island for his mother's sake. It was inappropriate for Zhen to deal with these matters by himself. After Mike came out of the evolutionary universe, he might take action. As a matter of fact, those who were able to become the holy beings had always been ambitious, powerful and decisive. That meant that Mike, who was one of them, might not be soft-hearted. Now, Samuel might do such things even before he came back. Soon, after they left the space channel, the main door of the Swirl Forest finally welcomed their arrival. Being a regular visitor of the Swirl Forest, Zhen had never entered from the front gate. Making a detour and passing through the Dongfang clan's transmission array this time, they were able to get to the Swirl Forest. After the Swirl Forest was controlled by Augustus, the other wealthy clans rarely explored it. Thick weeds and vines ran from one direction to the other, covering its gate now. In the fairy palace, Augustus was able to see their arrival. A confused expression suddenly took over him. What's wrong now? Hallett asked him flatly. Zhen didn't use the token. He just came back from a floating island through a transmission array. He returns with a group of people this time, Augustus uttered curiously, not meeting Hallett's eyes. What? Surprised, Hallett's eyes flashed. Even though they had been worried about Zhen's safety these past few days, nobody said anything about it. Finally hearing about Zhen's return, Hallett naturally got excited and asked, "Do you know who are with him?" "I've never even seen those people," Augustus answered, curling his lip. "Wait, one of them looks familiar. It's the guy who fled to the Abyss Demon region from the Luo clan back then. Send Harold, Joy and the others here. And bring these people to the fairy palace," Hallett ordered. Grinning, Augustus stretched out his finger to gently point at the Swirl Forest's entrance. It created an invisible wave which then turned into a straight line and spread forward rapidly. All the plants that grew on that straight line, including the towering trees and the weeds, then tilted to both sides, making room for a path which extended to where Zhen and the rest were standing. Roche and Sword Chen still looked hesitant seeing the plants being cleared for them. On the other hand, Zhen couldn't help laughing. "Looks like Gus is welcoming us. He even makes a path for us." Having an open and convenient path, they were able to fly through it quickly. Soon, they reached the gate of the fairy palace. At the same time, Joy, Harold and the others were also waiting at the gate of the fairy palace. Margaret and Letitia were also excited to see who the visitors were. Learning from Augustus that Zhen also brought a woman back, Joy got a bit surprised, wondering who the woman would be. Augustus even exaggerated the woman's beauty, saying that she was extremely gorgeous and one of the most beautiful women in the divine land. Letitia's and Margaret's faces lit up with hope earlier as Zhen had returned, but now they began to get morose after hearing what Augustus said. Seeing Zhen and the others arrive, Joy immediately became nervous. "What did I tell you? Wow, Zhen is really amazing," Augustus commented. Most of the women seemed a bit stunned as they observed the newcomers, but their gazes all fell on Lorena eventually. Entertaining all kinds of thoughts, they started to guess Lorena's identity. Since everyone was so busy, Harold got the chance to greet Lorena first. "She's my master's wife," he exclaimed, bowing his head heavily towards Lorena. In the beginning, Augustus was hoping to make fun of Zhen, but after he heard Harold, his face was filled with astonishment. Confused, Letitia, Margaret and the others exchanged glances among each other. Who would have known that the woman they thought as Zhen's lover was apparently his mother, their mother-in-law? Walking towards Harold, Lorena helped him up as she gave him a complicated look. "Thank you." Harold smiled shyly. "No worries. As long as I can help Master and you live safely, I'm willing to try my best." Turning around, Harold said something through his life vitality. Shortly after, another figure rushed out of the room. It was none other than Yan. Gazing at her brother blankly for a moment, she then threw herself into Lorena. Everyone in the fairy palace was wondering why Zen could bring back Lorena this time, but none of them was brave enough to drop the question. Having mixed emotions, Lorena held Yan in her arms. To date, this was the second time that she had met her daughter. She had happened to encounter both her son and daughter in the debate venue, but now they formally met each other for the first time. Harold heavily patted on the shoulder of Sword Chen while he watched Lorena and her daughter from afar. Harold, the voice sounded with much excitement from Sword Chen, who finally saw Harold again. As Mike's disciple, Sword Chen had stayed on the floating island of the Luo clan for a very short time. And after he left for the Abyss Demon region, no one had heard any news about him. Harold once thought that Sword Chen died already. After all, even a holy being couldn't ensure their survival in the Abyss Demon region. I haven't expected that you would be able to return from the Abyss Demon region one day. Harold sighed. I owe it all to Zen, answered Sword Chen, pointing at Zen. Surprised, Harold commented, it seems that when Zen was out this time, he entered the Abyss Demon region because of the stone mouse, right? Harold couldn't help worrying about Zen during that period. However, no matter how he guessed, he wouldn't have thought that the stone mouse would lead Zen into the Abyss Demon region. That was not even a coincidence but purely bad luck. He couldn't understand how Zen had been through all these terrible situations and managed to turn the tables in the end. Yes, Sword Chen nodded. He appeared to be excited to tell Harold what had happened during this period of time. However, before he could say anything, Harold gestured for him to keep quiet. Why don't we talk about how you survived in the Abyss Demon region during those years? How did you cultivate yourself to be a demi-holy being? Right now, Sword Chen's cultivation base was higher than that of Harold. Harold was confused about this point. On the other hand, Zen came back with Lorena, making Margaret, Letitia and the other women feel bashful and embarrassed. Unsure on how to deal with the situation, they tried to behave themselves. Still holding Yan in her arms, Lorena keenly perceived the emotions of everyone in the place. Zen, are you ready to introduce your wives to me? She asked, turning to Zen with a playful smile. She blinked at him to make him feel at ease. Smiling, Zen nodded and suggested, let's go inside first. They all went together inside the fairy palace. While they made their way inside the palace, Joy and Lorena exchanged glances but no one spoke a word. Everyone else were too busy to even notice it, except for Harold, who forced a bitter smile as he went along. Chapter 2442, Retrieve Memories. Harold was aware of the dynamics of Lorena and Joy's relationship. Lorena was an arrogant person. She had quarreled with his master because of Joy. At one point, they couldn't tolerate each other. Now that many years had passed, and everyone had gone through so much hardship, he assumed that they would have put aside all their past disputes. Besides, Lorena was already a mother-in-law, so she wouldn't quarrel due to jealousy in front of her son. After Lorena entered the hall, Letitia walked up to her with a cup of tea in her hand. She said with a slight blush, "Mother, please have some tea." Although these women had seen a lot, they felt strange to face their mother-in-law who suddenly popped up. Lorena examined Letitia with a smile on her face and praised her good looks. Zen then introduced Letitia, Margaret, Lavender and Aura to her one by one. Every race had different customs. Lavender might not be aware of the concept of a mother-in-law, so Zen tried his best to explain to her. Lorena was very happy to see Zen's wives and she chatted amicably with them. Seeing that the women kept chatting non-stop, Harold and Hallett became increasingly anxious. They were mostly concerned about how Zen had come back and how he managed to bring Lorena and Sword Chen back. When there was a brief pause in the conversation, Harold took advantage and interrupted them. Zen, what exactly happened in the Abyss Demon region? He inquired. Harold unwittingly rescued Zen from his mother's non-stop questions. Otherwise, his mother would interrogate him more. He said immediately, well, let me start with the stone mouse. When I just arrived at Evil Ghost region. Zen recounted everything, including how he met Leland in the Evil Ghost region and what happened on the reincarnation land later and how he encountered Sword Chen. Roche and Iris were seated on the other side of the hall. Roche occasionally interjected the conversation, describing what he saw on the side of the alliance of the powerful clans. When they heard that Zen had been dragged into the ice coffin and that he and Roche had to face Nicholas, everyone was astounded. Nobody really thought that there was so much hatred between Samuel and Nicholas, and, more surprisingly, that there was another 9 member in the Abyss Demon region. Are you saying that Nicholas was killed by you too? Harold asked in disbelief. Both Zen and Rocher nodded solemnly. However, it was more accurate to say that his death was caused by the fact that his array was broken by them. Unbelievable. I don't think even our master expected that. Harold stood up abruptly. He continued with excitement etched on his face. Since Nicholas is dead now, and other holy beings are still being revived, we can force the Dongfang clan. His plan was to force the Dongfang clan to release Mike's body. Lorena said with a faint smile, my husband has returned to the evolutionary universe. I think he will be revived shortly. Hearing this, Harold said with a bitter smile, all this should have been done by me, as I'm Master's eldest disciple. Now you have done everything and it makes me feel worthless. Hallett had been listening silently but now he suddenly spoke up, since Nicholas is dead, what we need to do next is to face the Yellow Emperor Guard. To his surprise, Zen shook his head and said, I'm afraid the situation is not that simple. Although Nicholas is dead, Samuel seized the opportunities and took control of the Abyss Demon region at last. He is no less ambitious than Nicholas. Hearing this, Harold's and Hallett's expressions changed. However, Augustus chuckled and said, that's not a problem. Since you have the ability to kill Nicholas, I think this holy being of the Han clan won't pose too much of a threat. Hallett looked at Augustus differently. They were concerned about the possible situations that might occur. After all, controlling the Abyss Demon region meant that Samuel would be able to remove the mixed element seals soon. When Zen finished narrating his story, he suddenly remembered something important. He put his hands to his cinnabar field and began to communicate with his inner world. Buzz. As Zen pointed with his finger, Laquisha and Elena appeared in front of everyone with a flash of light. Joy was saddened when she saw them. She walked up to the two girls and, sensing their auras, she asked, did they lose their souls? A dead body without a soul was just a zombie. As an old friend of the two girls, her heart ached when she realized this. Lorena also shot Zen a strange look. Having been trapped in a world for a long time, she had never seen the two girls of the Han clan. Samuel intended to use them to control the Abyss Demon region. He used the memory flames to help them improve their cultivation, and, at the same time, he had taken away their own memory flames. They didn't lose their souls, but their memories have been completely erased, explained Zen. Samuel. She repeated the name. Due to Zen's words, she already knew his real identity as well as the reason why his temper changed greatly. Even if he has a deep, bitter hatred for Nicholas, he doesn't have to use this method for revenge. After all, they are his children. He is a beast without any human feelings whatsoever. Joy, who was a member of the Han clan, felt sorry for what happened to the two girls. Samuel's ghastly actions sent a chill down her spine. It doesn't matter. Samuel has erased their memories, but my mother will be able to retrieve their memories. Mother, please use the reincarnation soul weapon to help them, Zen requested. She nodded willingly. Although she hadn't completely refined the reincarnation soul weapon, she could still use its basic functions. Standing up, Lorena closed her eyes and focused her mind. She connected to the sea of memory flames in the reincarnation land and soon found the girl's memory flames using the reincarnation soul weapon. She gently brushed her fingers over the spot between Laquisha's and Elena's eyebrows turn by turn. The memory flames shot back into Laquisha's and Elena's souls. After a short while, the girls' eyelids fluttered and they opened their eyes slowly. The moment Laquisha opened her eyes, she held her head and screamed, Dad, what are you doing? It was moments later that Laquisha finally put her hands down and stared at the scene before her eyes. Laquisha's memory had paused at the moment when Samuel replaced her memory flame. That was why she had such a terrified reaction. Now that her memory flame was restored and her memory had reconnected to her soul, it continued where it left off. Laquisha felt disoriented. She suddenly found herself in a strange place and she was surrounded by a bunch of strangers. No, there was one person she could recognize and that was Zen. Despite the great confusion in her mind, she didn't immediately ask Zen for answers. Instead, she threw herself into his arms and began to sob softly. As for Elena, she was completely at a loss because she didn't realize it when Samuel took away her memory flame. She strolled over to Joy and asked, Aunt Joy, what happened? Where are we now? Chapter 2443, Plunder. Joy's heart ached. She took Elena into her arms to comfort her. It was unfortunate that Elena and her sister had such a father. Zen, my father. Laquisha said, sniffling in Zen's arms. Don't worry, I know everything, Zen interrupted in a soothing voice. He had read Laquisha's memories, so he already knew what she was thinking. Seeing this, Letitia, Margaret, and the others exchanged a meaningful look with one another. Although Laquisha had guessed that her father had attacked her, she didn't know what had happened exactly. Zen quickly gave Laquisha and Elena a full account of what had happened. After finally learning the ins and outs of the matter, the two women burst into tears again, heartbroken over how their father had treated them. The mark that had been left on them had already been erased by Zen in the black water. Samuel had no idea that his two daughters had returned to their normal state. At this moment, he and Rosie arrived at the edge of the time sea. Watching the waves formed by colorful time fragments, Rosie couldn't help but let out an appreciative sigh. In the beginning, the time sea hadn't been so vast. She used to live by the sea back then. The ordinary true gods who wanted to cross the boundless time sea had to rely on the ferrymen of the sun-blind race. Even the top rank and consummate true gods couldn't fly or use grand teleportation, however, holy beings could. "Let's go," Samuel said gruffly. Whoosh! Samuel, Pascal, and Rosie suddenly vanished into thin air. The next moment, they found themselves in the floating island of the Han clan. The vast majority of the disciples of the Han clan had no knowledge of Samuel's rebellious actions. In recent days, the people of the Han clan had been panicked and worried about the safety of their holy emperor, just like the disciples of the other powerful clans. The moment Samuel appeared on the floating island, he let his aura spread out through the land to alert the disciples of the Han clan. Alfredo, who was practicing in a quiet room, immediately sensed Samuel's aura and rushed out of the room, his eyes lighting up in joy. "All the disciples of the Han clan, come here to see me." Samuel's low voice was transmitted to each of the disciples. In no time, all of them gathered in the center of the floating island. The elders of the Han clan, like Alfredo, came as well. When they noticed the woman who was standing beside Samuel, their eyes flashed with surprise. It was obvious from her aura that she was a fierce being from the Abyss Demon region. They wondered how their holy emperor had brought her out. "Congratulations, holy emperor, you're finally back," greeted Alfredo with cupped hands. He hadn't gone along with the alliance of the powerful clans to explore the Abyss Demon region. When he had learned that Nicholas was dead, he had been overwhelmed with worry. After all, Joy was gone, and he, being a mere consummate true god, simply couldn't take charge of the overall situation. Compared to the other powerful clans, the Han clan was too weak. So naturally, he was happy to see their leader again. Samuel smiled and said, "How is everything going in our clan?" "Everything is fine," Alfredo replied with a smile. "Good." Samuel glanced at the disciples and said, "All those on and above top-rank true god realm, leave the floating island with me." A look of puzzlement appeared on the faces of all the disciples. "Leave the floating island? To where? We don't need to leave the floating island if the Holy Emperor wants to go to a forbidden land. The transmission array of the Abyss Demon region has been destroyed. Do we have to go to the Abyss Demon region with the Holy Emperor?" The disciples kept speculating in their minds. Even Alfredo was confused. After letting his words sink in, Samuel continued, "Come with me to plunder the floating island of the Dongfang clan." Hearing this, all the disciples were shocked. Was Samuel out of mind? He wanted to plunder the floating island of the Dongfang clan. What was he doing? Was he planning to fight against the alliance of the powerful clans? The holy emperor of the Dongfang clan had died, but the other holy beings of the alliance might still be alive, so naturally, everyone was confused. Alfredo was also stunned. He looked at Samuel with a serious look and asked, "Holy Emperor, what happened?" "Nicholas is dead. We have control of the Abyss Demon region," Samuel said lightly, as if it was no big deal. As if on cue, Pascal raised his hand. Streaks of black light spread out of the ring in his hand and slowly came together, forming two enormous wings. Then, a terrifying amount of power poured out of them. The light was so huge and bright that it was visible from the other floating islands as well. The people on the other floating islands all looked at the floating island of the Han clan with horror on their faces. In a pavilion of the Sword Clan, Gibson, one of the holy beings of the Sword Clan, abruptly opened his eyes. Then, with a flash, he leapt high up into the sky and looked over at what was happening. Some of the elders of the Sword Clan also joined him in the air to watch the floating island of the Han clan. They were all shocked by the terrifying amount of power. "It's from the Han clan," one of the elders said. "What could possess such terrifying power?" Another one remarked. Gibson shook his head with a serious expression and said, "Maybe it has something to do with the Abyss Demon region." Just like the people of the Sword Clan, the holy beings and demi-holy beings on the other floating islands were also afraid of the power that had been unleashed on the floating island of the Han clan. From now on, the floating island of the Dongfang clan, and even the entire Time Sea and the Divine Land all belong to our clan. Except for me, no one else in the Divine Land can dare to be a holy being. Samuel declared excitedly. As the power of the ring in Pascal's hand intensified, the disciples of the Han clan watched in a mixture of shock and awe. Our clan dominates the divine land now. We have surpassed the Dongfang clan. More than that, although the Dongfang clan was the leader of the alliance of powerful clans in the past, it didn't dominate the Time Sea or the divine land. His words immediately had an effect on the disciples of the Han clan. They were now itching to go over to the floating island of the Dongfang clan, which was the richest and most prosperous place in the Time Sea. If Samuel was personally leading them to plunder it, it would be a great opportunity to make a fortune. Disciples of the Han clan, follow me, Samuel said as he pointed at the sky with his finger and produced a space channel that led directly to the floating island of the Dongfang clan. Then, he disappeared with Pascal and Rosie. As for the disciples of the Han clan, they were all overcome with greed and rushed into the space channel one after another. Although Samuel had only called for those on and above top-rank True God realm to accompany him, none of them wanted to give up such a good opportunity. Even the low-rank True Gods and proving godly warriors rushed in. However, when they arrived at the floating island of the Dongfang clan, they stopped, not daring to go any closer. Sitting right in front of them was a holy being Pearson. In addition to Pearson, there were 2 demi-holy beings, several consummate True Gods, and hundreds of top-rank True Gods. All of them were dressed in black and had a look of determination on their faces. They reckoned themselves to be the daredevils of the Dongfang clan. Chapter 2444, Appease Samuel's Anger. Samuel was slightly shocked by the scene that greeted him when he appeared on the Dongfang clan's floating island. He immediately released his spiritual sense and found that the whole floating island was empty. The majority of the Dongfang clan's members were gone, only a few hundred people in front of him were left. His face immediately darkened. Only moments ago, he had incited the disciples of the Han clan to plunder and destroy the Dongfang clan's floating island. He had never anticipated that the Dongfang clan's members would leave without any trace, as if they had foreseen his plot. His first fear was that a large amount of wealth of the Dongfang clan would also have been taken away. Before he could react, Pearson spoke. Most of the disciples of our Dongfang clan have gone back to the Ray Tree. Only 573 of us have remained behind. All the magic weapons, divine might coins, pills, arrays, and classics of the Dongfang clan have been left behind as well. All our wealth and even the lives of 573 people here will be handed over to you. We only hope that you can let our Dongfang clan off this time. The headquarters of the Dongfang clan was in the Ray Tree. As long as the Ray Tree existed, the Dongfang clan could be called a powerful clan even if its floating island was destroyed. After all, the Dongfang clan had some unknown and powerful warriors apart from Pearson. While Pearson spoke, the rest of the warriors of the Dongfang clan, including Winthrop, stared ahead with a calm expression on their faces. They had become death warriors not to fight against Samuel, but to appease his anger with their lives. Samuel looked at Pearson in surprise and sneered, "Do you think I will let off the Dongfang clan just because a few hundred of you willingly hand over your lives?" In the past, everyone on the Yu clan's floating island was also slaughtered cruelly. Killing just a few hundred of you will not be enough for me to take revenge. When the Dongfang clan's members heard this, their faces suddenly turned pale. Pearson's eyes were filled with pain. Gritting his teeth, he suddenly knelt down in front of Samuel and hit his head against the cyan bricks so hard that he immediately smashed them. "Please forgive our Dongfang clan's crimes." Pearson was a well-known and respected holy being in the divine land, but now, he was conceding to Samuel and throwing away all his dignity and self-respect in order to save the future of the Dongfang clan. The other disciples of the Dongfang clan had bulging veins on their faces when they watched Pearson do that. Until a month ago, the Dongfang clan had been a noble and powerful clan. But now, Pearson, a holy being of their clan who had been living in seclusion, was kneeling down before Samuel. It was humiliating for their whole clan, but there was nothing they could do about it. The hundreds of warriors who had remained behind were not afraid of death. For them, the continuity of the Dongfang clan was far more important and worth sacrificing themselves for. Bang, bang, bang. One by one, the disciples of the Dongfang clan lowered their heads, knelt down, and knocked their heads against the cyan bricks, which immediately cracked under the pressure. However, Samuel continued to look indifferent as if nothing out of the ordinary was happening in front of him. Rosie, however, couldn't stand to watch the scene any longer, so she said coldly, "Now that the Dongfang clan has given up their floating island and offered these warriors as a sacrifice, can't you forgive them?" Samuel glanced at Rosie and said with a sneer, "If the Yellow Emperor guards kneel down in front of your 9 Li race, will you forgive them?" The Nine Li race had deep enmity with the Yellow Emperor guards, and they couldn't tolerate the fact that their race had been exterminated. Rosie was stunned into silence for a few moments. Finally, she bit her lips and said, "That is a different situation." "Different, ha ha," Samuel erupted into wild laughter. Then, he continued, "In my previous life, the stone mouse and I were as close as brothers. My wife and I loved each other very much. My son was a young talent, a promising man with unlimited prospects. Our clan had 3,000 masters, and 100,000 disciples. And all of us were killed by Nicholas. How can such a hatred be wiped off by killing just a few hundred warriors? How can they expect a floating island to be enough to appease me? How can they ever think that I will forgive them? It is so silly to do that." Even the disciples of the Han clan were stunned to hear these words. During recent decades, it had often been said that Samuel's temperament had changed a lot, almost as if he had become another person. However, no one had known the reason for this, not even Alfredo. But now, after hearing Samuel mention his previous life, they found that things were finally starting to make sense. His previous life, the Yu clan. So our Holy Emperor is Gregorio's reincarnation. At first, Alfredo found Samuel's words inconceivable, but then he recalled reading about Gregorio and the stone mouse in a book. Although the Yu clan had been destroyed, there were records of them in the classics. Soon, Alfredo understood what was happening. In fact, after Zen and Master Evil had released the stone mouse, the mouse had awakened Samuel's memory of his previous life. The real Samuel was actually already dead, in his place was Gregorio. Samuel's body was now just a vessel for Gregorio. Pascal, Laquisha, and Elena actually didn't mean anything to him anymore. He just saw them as chess pieces to take revenge. He wouldn't feel bad even if the whole Han clan was destroyed. Rosie, too, was rendered speechless by his speech. Bang, bang, bang. The Dongfang clan's members remained kneeling down and kept hitting their heads against the ground. All the while, more and more disciples of the Han clan passed through the space channel and came to the Dongfang clan's floating island. So far, the only reason all the disciples of the Han clan who had gathered here were waiting patiently was because they were afraid of Pearson and the others. However, as more and more disciples appeared, they began to get impatient. Suddenly, someone in the crowd shouted, "You old mongrel, if you want to die, then just die as soon as possible. After you die, you will not know whether the Dongfang clan is destroyed or not. Yes, you don't have to worry about what happens after you die anyway." Another person in the crowd added. The disciples of the Han clan didn't care about the Dongfang clan's fate at all. They had enthusiastically followed Samuel here so that they could plunder this floating island. After all, Nicholas was dead, so they had no scruples. Besides, many of them thought that the Dongfang clan should be exterminated. Although a portion of the disciples from the Han clan sympathized with the Dongfang clan, they were unwilling to stand up for them. Even if they wanted to, they had no qualifications to do that. Hearing the words of the disciples, Samuel said to Pearson, "If you ask for death, I will agree. But I will never let off the Dongfang clan. Ha ha." The Abyss Demon region was already under his control, and now, he felt like the entire Divine Land was, too. When he would destroy the Ray Tree would depend on his mood. As soon as he finished speaking, Pascal flew toward the Dongfang clan's members with the pair of black wings spreading out behind him. The wings exuded a terrifying momentum. As Pascal flew over the death warriors of the Dongfang clan, all the flesh and blood in their bodies instantly collapsed and turned into powder. Even Pearson and Winthrop were killed in that way. Even at the last second, Pearson hadn't made any attempt to resist. He had just continued to kneel down on the ground. Chapter 2445, Ignore. Killing a holy being was a very complicated process. It was a different story, however, when Pearson was determined to die to protect the Ray Tree. A few seconds after he died, dull thunder resounded from the sky. It was the sound of a universe that was collapsing unto itself. It was Pearson who destroyed his universe by himself. Samuel looked up at the sky, as the dull thud of the collapsing universe sounded in his ears. He murmured with a mocking smirk, "This is the end of an ant." Even at the cost of his own life, he still couldn't get what he wanted. Rosie glanced at him but opted to remain quiet. After Pascal killed hundreds of people from the Dongfang clan, the disciples of the Han clan couldn't hold back any longer and rushed forward. The Dongfang clan had been in the leading position for many years. They were quite wealthy and had many rare treasures in their possession. The disciples of the Han clan didn't care about the animosity between Samuel and the Dongfang clan. They rushed to the herbal garden as soon as they had the opportunity. They raided and snatched the pill formulas and the weapons of the Dongfang clan like hungry locusts. Rumble. They were running everywhere and left a mess anywhere they went. Someone smashed open a hall in his impatience, and hundreds of people immediately rushed in. Shouts and screams could be heard continuously. They plundered the place and even started to fight with each other. The elegant buildings of the Dongfang clan were soon destroyed. The whole floating island was ruined as well. The truth was that Samuel could have taken over the whole floating island, but he wanted to vent his anger over the years, so he brought his people here. This was why, when Samuel saw the ruins left by their plunder, he was filled with great satisfaction. With a pleased smile, he left with Rosie and Pascal. Soon after, he appeared in the Hall of Holy Beings amidst the clouds. Holy Beings, show yourselves, Samuel's commanding voice echoed in the Hall of Holy Beings. This was a place where holy beings gathered and communicated with each other. As Samuel spoke, his voice reached the ears of the holy beings. They had been watching the drama unfold on their floating islands. The holy beings of the alliance of the powerful clans were all reborn in their universes, and the living ones were those who were unwilling to join the alliance. They frowned at Samuel. They were torn between happiness and anger as they saw what he did. In the past, they suffered a lot under the hands of the Dongfang clan. Now, as they watched the Dongfang clan be plundered, they were secretly overjoyed. However, they were not very pleased by Samuel at that moment. How could he summon other holy beings in such an arrogant and disrespectful way? Did he take the holy beings as his subordinates? The Hall of Holy Beings was different from the alliance of the powerful clans. Even Nicholas dared not order other holy beings when he was alive. Samuel, the Hall of Holy Beings is only for us to communicate with each other. How could you order us like that? Samuel, what do you want to talk about today? Quote. The voices of some of the holy beings could be heard from the Hall of Holy Beings, but none of them showed up. Samuel sneered, "Today, I'm going to rebuild the alliance of the powerful clans. I won't blame you if you don't want to show up, but you may have to move out of the floating islands." The holy beings frowned deeper when they heard his answer. Even Nicholas wouldn't dare to talk so arrogantly. His attitude irked them, but some of them were afraid of his strength. When the alliance of the powerful clans entered the Abyss Demon region, no news could be obtained. Samuel returned unharmed, but Nicholas died. As soon as he came back, he took his people and plundered the floating island of the Dongfang clan. Some of the holy beings could not help but wonder how he easily overpowered the Dongfang clan. "What if we refuse?" A dignified voice rang out. It was Woodruff from the War God Hall of the Moon Clan. The Moon Clan and the Sword Clan were both as rich and powerful as the Dongfang clan. Nicholas died, but the holy beings of the two clans didn't. "Samuel, do you want to be our enemy? Can you alone challenge all the powerful clans? Don't kid yourself. I don't know what ace you've got in your sleeves, but do you want to start universe wars one after another?" Led by Woodruff, the holy beings of the Bai clan, the Zhang clan, and other powerful clans all chipped in threateningly. Nicholas died because the furnace of dark and light collapsed. On the other hand, Pearson destroyed his universe to kill himself because he knew that the Dongfang clan could not defeat Samuel. Samuel did not kill either of them directly. To kill holy beings, one had to start a universe war. However, a universe war had many rules and restrictions. Holy beings could not participate in such wars directly. In a universe war, only 3 true gods were allowed to exist. This rule had been modified by Nicholas. Even though Samuel's strength was great, the creatures in his universe weren't as strong as him. Even if he launched a universe war and killed a holy being, it would exhaust the creatures in his universe. There was no way that he had the strength to start a second war. So the holy beings were not afraid of him at all. They ignored the proposal of rebuilding the alliance of the powerful clans. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Enormous clouds were blown into the Hall of Holy Beings. They turned into a dense fog, but otherwise, nothing was amiss. After the sarcastic remarks, the holy beings ignored Samuel, and there was quiet in the hall. Samuel stood still, his eyes twitching in annoyance. A stormy expression had taken over his face. His first plan was to rule the Time Sea, but now, he realized that he was too naive. After a long silence, Samuel said angrily, "Before long, you will beg me to join the alliance of the powerful clans." After that, he led Rosie and Pascal out of the Hall of Holy Beings. Meanwhile, in the center of the evolutionary universe, a peculiar view appeared. A dark red ball of light emitted sun-like radiance. It attracted the attention of countless people in the upper world. All of them tried to guess the origin of the red light ball, but they couldn't think of anything. Some Supreme Lords were curious about the light ball, as they traveled through the universe with their physical bodies. Their curiosity got the best of them, and they tried to approach it. However, before they could get close to it, they felt a unique aura. The aura was very kind, but it could not be resisted. It stopped anyone from approaching the red light ball. In a secret place of the celestial position race, Win looked at the scene in the sky. His face was bright with excitement. "What is this? Why are you so excited, Master Win?" Master Feng asked. He had also tried to explore the secret of the light ball, but he failed. In the end, he returned to the celestial position race and asked Win for help. He did not expect Win to be ecstatic at the sight of the light ball in the sky. My master is reborn. My master finally comes back to life. We made it. Zen made it. He hasn't been in the divine land for long. How fast." Win was so excited that he could not even speak clearly. Master Feng tried to make sense of Win's words. He gasped when he realized what he meant. Wasn't Win's master the owner of the evolutionary universe? Not long after Zen left, he had managed to save his father. What a surprise! Chapter 2446, Clark's Fury. As its ruler, Mike influenced the evolutionary universe in almost all aspects. In order to protect the evolutionary universe, he had to transform it entirely, causing a number of disasters across its span. If Mike were to return, it would be a blessing for the hundreds of trillions of secondary creatures in the evolutionary universe. Tell the other Supreme Lords and World Lords that they are not allowed to disturb my master. Win commanded. Master Feng pulled out a roaring token to follow Win's order. The light ball is where the master of the evolutionary universe is to be reborn. No one is allowed to approach it. If anyone disobeys. Master Feng paused here, thought for a moment, and then smiled as he said, "You will have to face the consequences." He knew that no one would dare to provoke the ruler and founder of the evolutionary universe. When his voice resounded through the universe, the creatures within it began to whisper and murmur to each other, causing a loud hum. A few Supreme Lords, who knew the truth, also learned something from this news. The colossal red light ball was continuously absorbing energy from the entire evolutionary universe. No one could observe the change in the energy levels of the evolutionary universe, not even the Supreme Lords. After all, holy beings had absolute authority over their universes. The red light ball was an independent world. At the center of this world, a human figure was coming into existence, quietly but surely. This human figure was not yet a living being or even just a body. But it had abundant levels of vitality and the power of its soul was irresistible. When the figure took a complete human shape, it would mean that Mike was finally reborn. In the center of the Murphy universe was also a dark red light ball. Within this light ball was a complete human body. It belonged to Murphy, the holy being of the Mu clan. Murphy's body was complete, and his consciousness fully aroused. It wouldn't be long before he emerged from the light ball. Zen had killed Murphy in the Abyss Demon region. Murphy would never forget how Zen had controlled the true demon body. I wonder if Nicholas has killed Zen and gotten the true demon body, Murphy muttered to himself. The light ball was isolated from the outside world. He didn't know what was happening outside, which meant that he had no idea of Nicholas's death. At the speed which he was going, it would take him half a year to be reborn. The rate at which time flowed in the Murphy universe was 10 times faster than that in the Divine Land. If time were to be calculated according to the way in the Divine Land, he would only need about 20 days to revive. Other holy beings were also being reborn, just like Murphy. Clark, Zeke, and Jeremiah were absorbing the energy from their universes. Half a month later, the red light ball that covered Clark dissipated. He was the first holy being to be reborn. A countless number of secondary creatures of his universe gathered at his feet. They regarded him as the creator of the universe, and all the Supreme Lords and the World Lords knelt before him, looking upon him with a pious expression. It was not often that secondary creatures got the chance to get in touch with the Creator, especially in a perfect universe like Clark's. For them, the Creator only existed in an illusory legend. But this time, they finally had the chance to see their Creator's face. But Clark ignored all the secondary creatures that were bowing to him in worship. He looked at them witheringly, snorted rather coldly, and disappeared from the universe. The Supreme Lords and World Lords froze, having no idea why the Creator was so angry. The truth, however, was that Clark was not angry with the secondary creatures. He was angry because he had humiliated himself by being careless enough to have been burned to death by the red-eyed girl. Buzz. The moment he was reborn, he went back to the floating island of the Tang clan. "Where is Oscar? You better come here right now." Clark roared angrily. At Clark's angry voice, Oscar used the grand teleportation and appeared before him. Oscar was a consummate true god, but he was much weaker than Walton and the others. This time, he had stayed on the floating island as the acting master. Holy Emperor, you have come back from the Abyss Demon region. Congratulations, Holy Emperor, Oscar said, a big smile on his face. Cut the garbage, I was reborn in the universe, Clark said furiously. Oscar was surprised and realized what had happened. Now that Nicholas was dead, many people on the floating islands speculated that maybe everyone belonging to the alliance of the powerful clans was wiped out. Now Clark's words had confirmed their conjecture. But fortunately for the Tang clan, Clark's universe hadn't collapsed. Tell me about what happened in the Divine Land recently. Has Holy Nicholas returned? Clark asked. Oscar folded his hands together and said, Holy Nicholas's universe has collapsed. I'm afraid he's already dead. What? Clark's eyes widened in disbelief. What nonsense are you talking? He hadn't seen what the furnace of dark and light had caused. According to him, it didn't matter if Nicholas had truly been killed by Zen or Samuel. After all, Nicholas was a holy being and could be reborn. But now Oscar was telling him that Nicholas was dead. How could he believe that? At Clark's doubtful expression, Oscar hurried to explain, I dare not talk nonsense. Holy Nicholas's universe really collapsed over a month ago. How is it possible? Who could kill Holy Nicholas without launching a universe war? Clark said disbelievingly, shaking his head. Samuel returned later. He led his people to strip bare the floating island of the Dongfang clan, Oscar added. How dare he? How dare he plunder the Dongfang clan? These news were like thunderbolts raining down on him from a clear sky, making him angrier and angrier by the minute. He didn't know what had happened after he died, but only Samuel had returned. So it was natural for him to blame Samuel for it. He was about to impulsively set out to seek revenge. But Oscar stopped him by saying, Please don't think of revenge, Holy Emperor. Samuel must have nothing to fear since he has dared to plunder the Dongfang clan. I'm afraid that you will suffer if you go alone. How about we wait for the other holy beings? Only Nicholas had died forever. The other holy beings of the alliance of the powerful clans were being reborn as they spoke, and it wouldn't be long. Oscar's words calmed Clark down. Clark had died before Samuel's true identity was exposed. That was why he didn't know that Samuel was actually Gregorio, or why Samuel dared to plunder the floating island of the Dongfang clan. Although Nicholas had died, the other holy beings of the alliance of the powerful clans hadn't. But what gave Samuel the courage to fight the holy beings? Perhaps he had something to rely on. Clark sighed. He was in no hurry. He could wait for the other holy beings to be reborn before he sought revenge. Chapter 2447, The Use of the Ring. In less than 4 hours after Clark came back to life, Zeke returned to the Fang clan's floating island. He learned about everything in quite the same way as Clark, but Zeke was a very cautious fellow. He wasn't as angry as Clark. Instead, he dug deeper to find more information about the Han clan. As the holy beings had died around the same time, the time it took for them to be revived would differ, but it wouldn't make too much of a difference. Over the next 2 days, the holy beings were revived one after another. The holy beings had gathered on the floating island of the Mu clan as they were summoned by Murphy. What, are you saying that Samuel is actually Gregorio? Clark's eyes widened once more. Murphy nodded and said, You were already dead when it happened, so you didn't see it. Zeke, who was next to him, added, His spear was so powerful that it could destroy the space suppression of the forbidden area. He had an advantage in the forbidden area. We could do nothing to him. The only one who was able to stop Samuel at that time was Rosie's clone. Exactly how powerful is he? Clark asked again, unable to fathom the recent developments. Murphy thought about this for a while, and said, Let me put it this way, he's a little stronger than us and slightly weaker than Nicholas. However, the term, slightly weaker, was only applicable when Nicholas had not performed the Dark Light World transformation. Once Nicholas sacrificed himself to perform the technique, he was so much stronger than all the other holy beings. If Samuel is only a little stronger, how did he dare to plunder the floating island of Dongfang clan? Clark sneered. Jeremiah, who was next to him, chuckled as well. It is said that Samuel even imitated Nicholas and gathered holy beings in the Hall of Holy Beings to form a new alliance of powerful clans. But his plan was ridiculed by some holy beings like Woodruff. Ha ha ha, the holy beings of the alliance of the powerful clans suddenly burst into uncontrollable laughter. They were well aware of the holy beings' way of operating. Samuel had made a naive move. After all, it was very difficult to start a universe war. Murphy, who had done this once before, was certain of this fact. Samuel is back and Nicholas is dead, so is it him who captured the two girls in the end? Murphy assumed. After all, none of the holy beings present had survived, and they were not clear about who eventually took control of the Abyss Demon region. So what? Clark sneered and said, this is not the Abyss Demon region and the space law is not prohibited here. Do you think we are afraid of him? Ha, what a joke. Clark is absolutely right. We should avenge Holy Nicholas's death. Jeremiah advised calmly. If there is no other option, we will start a universe war. Another holy being chimed in enthusiastically. It appeared that these holy beings were disgruntled on Nicholas's behalf, but in fact, they had selfish motives. If everyone joined hands and succeeded in killing Samuel, they would be able to get the two girls and control the Abyss Demon region. Once anyone gained control of the Abyss Demon region, they would naturally replace Nicholas and become the new leader of the alliance of powerful clans. It was enough motivation for any ambitious warrior. Once everyone agreed to this plan, all the holy beings moved in a flash and appeared in the air above the floating island of the Han clan. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The holy beings hovered in the air together, emitting a strong aura, which immediately alerted the disciples of the Han clan of their arrival. So many holy beings have come to our island. These are the holy beings from the alliance of powerful clans. Gosh, our clan is going to be in big trouble. They are surely here to avenge the Dongfang clan. The disciples of the Han clan were in a state of panic. Their floating island was not very big. If the holy beings made a move, there was literally no place for them to hide. Come out, Samuel. Clark was the first to roar at the Han clan's floating island. The other holy beings didn't speak, but released their auras silently. They were determined to flush out Samuel from wherever he was hiding. After a short while, a space fluctuation appeared at the bottom of the floating island and Samuel and Pascal stepped out of the space channel. Samuel looked at Clark, who was up in the air, and asked with a mocking smile, "Hello, Clark. Why are you so angry today?" Flames began to glow on Clark's body and his robust body emitted a scorching aura. The disciples of the Han clan felt as if summer had arrived early and soon all of them were drenched in sweat. Clark replied, "Nicholas is dead and you dared to plunder the floating island of the Dongfang clan, so you are our enemy." Jeremiah, Murphy and other holy beings also took out their weapons and were ready for combat. Their plan was to kill Samuel first and then start a universe war. In the Abyss Demon region, these holy beings did not have the Spear of Supreme Harmony, so they couldn't do any harm to Samuel. But here in the Divine Land, the situation was different. "You want to fight?" Samuel smirked as he narrowed his eyes. "Well, I'll show you what kind of power I have." Next to him, Pascal lifted his right hand gently, and streams of black energy began to flow around him. Samuel had also been pondering about the use of the ring recently. The Swirl Forest, Everest Spirit Mountain, Soul Wilderness and the Abyss Demon region were called the four great forbidden lands, but of these, the Abyss Demon region was ranked first. Rumor had it that anyone who controlled the energy of Abyss Demon region would have the ability to destroy the Divine Land. Samuel had been contemplating these days. He thought that the reason why those holy beings did not respect or fear him was because the strength he displayed was not superior enough. When the black energy flowed around Pascal, the light gradually dimmed in the entire Divine Land. What's happening? The sun is getting diminished. It's just morning. Why has it become so dark? What the heck? I've been in the Divine Land for so many years, and I've never seen anything like this before. The seasons changed as per their schedule and day and night alterations in the Divine Land were extremely stable. There was almost no deviation ever. But today, a strange phenomenon was taking place, which caused the entire Divine Land to fall into darkness. This event raised many speculations among the divine citizens. Pascal lifted his right hand and slowly floated off the ground with his father. The black energy circling Pascal's body now emitted an even more terrifying aura. This aura suppressed Clark's flames. The bright flames became as dim as a weak candle flame. It was almost unnoticeable now. What kind of power is this? Clark's face turned pale. Murphy's eyelids twitched. Maybe his guess was right. Maybe the Abyss Demon region really fell into Samuel's hands. In that case, Zen and Rocher might be dead. Could it be true? The tension between the two sides was growing and a battle was about to erupt. At this time, a faint figure quietly appeared behind Samuel. "We are in the same boat. So why do we have to fight it out? Stop it, Samuel." As the voice rang out, an old man appeared in the air. "Master Hamish, look, Master Hamish is here." "Oh, it's Master Hamish." When Murphy and the rest saw Hamish, their eyes lit up. As members of the alliance of powerful clans on the floating islands, these holy beings were, of course, well aware that Hamish was the real sponsor of the alliance. Samuel's eyes narrowed slightly and the murderous look in his eyes disappeared. Pascal also covered the ring with his fingers, bringing all activity to a halt. The dark skies quickly brightened again, and dazzling sunshine flooded the entire divine land once more. Chapter 2448, Approval. The sudden appearance of Hamish had somewhat eased the tension on both sides, but Clark and the other holy beings still didn't want to let Samuel go. After all, the holy beings could be reborn infinitely. Even if they died during the fighting, they could be revived and engage in battle again. Master Hamish, you have no idea how ambitious this man is. He has robbed the Dongfang clan's floating island right after he returned from the Abyss Demon region. We can't just sit by and watch. The alliance of powerful clans was established to let the clans depend on each other and have a mutually beneficial relationship. How, then, could we tolerate this man? That's Gregorio, someone harboring a deep hatred against the Dongfang clan. As the holy beings discussed the matter among themselves, the situation became a little chaotic. Hamish waved his hand at them, and everyone calmed down. He looked down at the disciples of the Han clan, reached out his hand, and conjured up a bright yellow ring of light. The ring of light spread out and instantly encased Samuel, Pascal and the holy beings. He didn't want irrelevant people to hear what he was about to say. Some of the hatred in this world should be laid to rest. In the past, Nicholas destroyed the floating island of the Yu clan. Now, Samuel has already taken his revenge on him. This way, the enmity between the two clans can cease. Besides, Samuel doesn't stir up trouble for the Ray Tree, so everyone can take a step back. What do you think? Hamish smiled faintly. Clark immediately realized that Hamish meant to resolve the dispute. Murphy's and Jeremiah's eyes flashed. They wondered whether this Yellow Emperor guard was going to support Samuel. Why, was it because Samuel was so powerful? Samuel said nothing. Even though Pearson had sacrificed himself for a compromise, Samuel had no plans of giving up until the entire Dongfang clan was wiped out. Every single member of the Dongfang clan must be exterminated. He knew that better than anyone else. He himself had been neglected by Nicholas in the past. After being reincarnated, he finally seized the chance to take his revenge. However, hearing what Hamish said, Samuel thought it inappropriate for him to offer a retort and held his tongue. Most importantly, he realized in the Hall of Holy Beings that despite having control over the absolute power, he would still have difficulty suppressing other powerful clans if no holy being followed him. However, if the holy beings such as Clark, Murphy, Jeremiah, and Zeke could help him, then the situation would be entirely different. Master Hamish, what do you mean? Clark asked with a frown. Hamish spoke calmly. I've already made it clear. You need a leader to take charge of the alliance of the powerful clans. And Samuel is to be that leader. Impossible. Jeremiah snorted derisively. That's what I'm saying. Zeke agreed. If he becomes the leader of the alliance, our Fang clan will immediately quit. Although the holy beings also pursued the absolute power, they remained loyal to Nicholas. If the other holy beings stood behind Samuel after he had just destroyed the Dongfang clan's floating island, it would only bring shame on their heads. The corners of Hamish's mouth slightly curled up. In this respect, I'm afraid you have no other choice. The expressions on Murphy's and the others' faces changed slightly. They never expected that Hamish would be so determined to support Samuel. Clark said angrily, Master Hamish, do you think that's fair to Nicholas? Hamish only shook his head and replied, this is my brother's decision. I believe that he will also break the mixed element seal soon. After all, Nicholas was only a pawn of the Yellow Emperor guards, a figurehead and spokesman. That pawn had already been dead, and Samuel, who was even more useful in comparison, was willing to be on their side. Layden saw no reason to refuse him. However, this decision disappointed all of the holy beings, who looked shocked after hearing these words. Hamish was considered to be the weakest among the Yellow Emperor guards. If the more powerful Yellow Emperor guards were released, what would happen? Would there be any force in the entire divine land that could contend with them? Looking at the silent holy beings, Hamish said consolingly, everyone, don't worry. I'm sure that it won't be long before the entire divine land is under our control. We'll eliminate all of the other setbacks. After a moment of silence, the holy beings finally decided to leave. Even if they were not totally convinced, they could do nothing about it. Looking at Murphy and the others who seemed depressed, Clark got dejected inwardly, thinking how unlucky they were to have such a matter happen to them. After the holy beings had left, Hamish suddenly said to Samuel, there. I have fulfilled my brother's promise to help you become the leader of the alliance of powerful clans. Samuel shook his head. I'm afraid I will only be a nominal leader. Of course they are not convinced for now because I am the only one who came today. Once my brother, Layton, is here, they will have no choice but to accept, Hamish said flatly. But these holy beings have unparalleled understanding of the rules of the divine land and they are not afraid of death at all, Samuel said with a sigh. Clark, in particular, seemed undaunted by anything. After he had experienced death thousands of times, dying was nothing to him anymore. Once he was involved in a universe war, Samuel's advantage would no longer exist. After all, it was the war of the creatures in the universes. Hamish suddenly burst into a faint smile. This is not a problem at all. My brother can directly kill a holy being. With that kind of power, no one in the divine land will dare to disobey him. Samuel's eyes lit up. Then, when will the mixed element seal be broken? Everything is ready, Hamish said lightly. You need to go to the northernmost region again. His gaze fell on Pascal. That's great. Samuel nodded. When he came back to the floating island this time, Samuel failed to get the approval of other holy beings, thereby causing him some disappointment. The next time he returned, he would release all of the Yellow Emperor guards. By then, he would overthrow those stubborn beings. When Samuel activated the ring earlier, the fairy palace in the Swirl Forest also fell into the darkness. The people in the fairy palace were puzzled by this scene. What type of sorcery could be used to cover the whole sky? Even after speculating in the fairy palace for a long time, Harold could not come up with a satisfactory answer. Recently, the fairy palace was inundated by an increasing number of people, who filled the palace with noise and excitement every day. The godly geniuses who returned to the fairy palace included Rocher, Lucille who had been sent back by Zen, Kurt, and Lone. It was Harold who had found and brought back Kurt and Lone. These several godly geniuses had been cultivating their skills day and night in the training tower. Upon coming out of the tower, they expressed their delight in seeing Zen and Rocher. Among the godly geniuses in the fairy palace, Lucille was the unluckiest. She was captured to become a puppet, and thus her training time was delayed. As a result, her cultivation base was slightly weaker than those of the rest of the godly geniuses. In the past, Lone was the weakest of the 10 godly geniuses. Then, after having stepped into the divine land, he inherited the relics of a great clan's ancestral land. Afterwards, he managed to succeed in every endeavor, all the time. Now, he had reached the peak of top-rank true god realm and was starting to train to become a consummate true god. As for the remaining godly geniuses, it would still be difficult to find them even if Harold were to look for them in person. Even with his unparalleled skill in deduction, the search for the godly geniuses would be as difficult as looking for a needle in a haystack. Fortunately, Mike would revive soon. By then, if Mike would look for them, he would definitely be able to track the location of the other godly geniuses. Chapter 2449, Luck. Deep in the Swirl Forest, a ripple flowed on the surface of a pool. Splash! Laquisha emerged from the pool. A pair of over 100-foot-long tentacles closely followed Laquisha. The tentacles were covered with barbs, and each barb glinted with radiant light. Apparently, every one of them was laced with poison. The 2 tentacles rushed at Laquisha at high speed. Laquisha dodged them as she continued to hover over the water, the tips of her toes constantly touching the surface of the water. She maneuvered her dodges smoothly and quickly like a dragonfly. Aunt Laquisha, watch out! Jeffrey shouted, who was standing beside the pool. As this pair of tentacles were about to trap Laquisha, a purple light streamed right from Laquisha's eyes. Sizzle! A handful of purple preternatural flames spiraled out and wrapped her in. The fierce beast in the water seemed terrified of the preternatural flames protecting Laquisha. It didn't dare to get close. Caw! The fierce beast let out a scream under the water. The water that was originally a pool of dark green turned into strong hue of blood red. Then a semicircle head that resembled a pot cover popped out of the water. Beneath the pot cover were wedge-shaped teeth laced with poison. As its figure emerged from the surface of the water, its poison teeth shot at Laquisha covertly. It was only when Laquisha noticed the poison teeth that her face revealed a trace of panic. Although Laquisha was a consummate true god, she had reached such level of power because Samuel assisted her with the help of the memory flames. In terms of combat experience, Laquisha was far inferior to the other consummate true gods. The fierce beast under the water was called Green Turbid Monster. Their number was few in the Swirl Forest, but their strength was powerful. Only those at least at the consummation of true god realm were able to fight against them. When the poisonous teeth were about to hit Laquisha, space fluctuations appeared on the surface of her figure and she suddenly vanished. She had used the grand teleportation and appeared close to Jeffrey's side. Splash! The green turbid monster was irritated at Laquisha. Its huge body left the water and rushed directly to the two. Caw! It screamed in fury which was piercing to the ears. Then, it whipped out its tentacles, lashing at everything that was close to their proximity. At the very moment, a flash of crimson light streamed behind Jeffrey. The crimson light shot towards the green turbid monster. It shot through the green turbid monster's head without any sound, and pierced the huge tree at the other end of the pool, leaving an empty round hollow on the trunk. Plop! It was as if the huge beast's soul had been drained in an instant, and it fell into the water, creating layers of green ripples. Grandma, you're amazing. Turning his head, Jeffrey looked at Lorena happily. Lorena smiled faintly. Well, you can go get the stuff in the pool now. Hearing Lorena's words, Jeffrey dived into the water without hesitation. Watching the scene, Augustus, who stood not far away, shook his head and sighed. Poor green turbid monster, you've suffered a lot this time. When you're reborn again, I'll find you a better place. Over the years, Jeffrey's personality had become much more mature. However, Letitia and the others had pampered him too much, so his stubborn personality had not been worn off. He had read some books about the swirl forest and claimed that there might be treasures where the green turbid monster appeared. Augustus, who controlled the swirl forest, knew that such a legend was completely nonsense. In history, it was true that a disciple of some powerful clan on a floating island obtained a supreme treasure of belief after killing the green turbid monster. But that was pure luck. After knowing about the legend, Jeffrey had been pestering Augustus to take him to hunt treasures. Being tricked by Jeffrey for so many times, how could Augustus fulfill his wish? He had been avoiding Jeffrey in the fairy palace recently. But when the fairy palace started getting more visitors, one of whom was Jeffrey's grandmother, things started to change. Jeffrey's grandmother, Lorena, gave the boy whatever he wanted, and with Laquisha joining the treasure hunt, Augustus could only lament over the miserable fate of the fierce beasts in the swirl forest. Plop, 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 a series of bubbles appeared in the pool. Lorena stared at the water, looking for Jeffrey's figure at the bottom of the pool. She was trying to make sure Jeffrey was safe from harm. Despite being Zen's mother, she was never there during Zen's childhood nor his developing years. Therefore, she made a resolve to prioritize Jeffrey. In a short while, the water surface split, and Jeffrey emerged. I told you there couldn't be any treasure. Augustus stared at Jeffrey with a bored look, but as his eyes flashed, his gaze was fixed on Jeffrey's hand. There was a green stone in his hand. The stone shaped like an oval cobblestone. It exuded a strong energy force. Haha, I knew there must be treasures in this pool. Jeffrey swam towards the bank, tossed the stone to Lorena and said, Granny, take a look at that stone. What is it? Lorena examined the stone carefully, a hint of surprise evident in her eyes. She pressed her hand on the stone, feeling the energy force within it. She closed her eyes and infused her spiritual sense into it. She then opened her eyes, smiled and remarked, this can be considered as a second-level supreme treasure of belief. Laquisha's eyes widened in awe and said, Jeffrey is so lucky. A second-level supreme treasure of belief. It's even rare on the floating islands. Supreme treasures of belief were the essence of the Forbidden Lands. Regardless of the level a supreme treasure of belief possessed, every treasure bore a unique effect. Every powerful clan deemed them with great importance. Augustus was speechless as he looked at the stone. After he controlled the swirl forest, he had searched all over the forest and only found 3 first-level supreme treasures of belief, and 1 second-level supreme treasure of belief. How was it so easy for the boy to find a supreme treasure of belief? Augustus couldn't help but spit in disdain, that was just dumb luck. Right after he spoke, he suddenly felt a very unique aura spread out from several dozens of miles away. A green vortex appeared in the sky. The peculiar energy it emitted immediately drew everyone's attention. That's where Zen cultivates. What method is it? Augustus stared at the green vortex, and his eyelids twitched. When Lorena saw the green vortex, her eyes widened. It was this very green energy that broke the furnace of dark and light in the Abyss Demon region. Although Zen had told them about everything after he left the Divine Land, he had never mentioned about this power. Since he never mentioned anything about this, Lorena didn't ask further questions. But even with her knowledge and experience, she could not tell the origin of this power. Zen is cultivating, we better not disturb him, said Lorena calmly. As soon as she finished speaking, a green star rushed out of the vortex and fell into the swirl forest. Boom! The ground trembled, and tremors spread miles away when the star hit the ground. Zen stared at the huge crater in front of him and said to himself, the power of the falling star palm depends on the number of truth crystals. But my truth crystal was inherited from the Chaos Ancient God. What can I do to increase the number of truth crystals? He had defeated Nicholas in the Abyss Demon region largely by relying on the falling star palm. Before that, he had thought that the power of the falling star palm was not strong enough, so he hadn't used it. But now, it seemed that it was still necessary to strengthen this technique. Chapter 2450, Green-Eyed Lorena. Condense more truth crystals. Number 9527 had not given any thought to this before. Its master was the one in charge of the truth and was free to use it however he desired. And as for the truth crystal, it was a unique technique that its master had acquired after having observed the energy of the great unity in the chaos for a long time. Now its master's blood had fused with that of Zen, and now flowed as one. Zen was the one who had been selected by its master, the only one who had the honor to be chosen to inherit the blood of its master. Number 9527 was confident in the theurgies of truth energy, such as the falling star palm. It could easily teach Zen how to use them, but it had never considered what to do in case he needed to increase the number of truth crystals. Hypothetically, the purer your blood, the more truth crystals you should be able to condense, pondered number 9527 aloud. This proposition, even if it were correct, was of little use to Zen. The only way he could further purify his blood was by absorbing that of the Chaos Ancient God, a feat that was presently impossible. Luckily, there is a simpler way, said number 9527 quickly, having noticed Zen's dissatisfied expression. We would have to obtain and learn the truth rules that lie locked inside the crystal. Zen's eyes brightened somewhat as he heard this proposal. The truth rules within the crystal. He lightly tapped the air with his finger, thereby condensing a truth crystal again. Now, he was faced with a dilemma. He knew how to use the truth crystal but did not know why. He could condense it, but lacked the knowledge about the nature of the strange energy it contained. He recalled the way Nicholas had used the truth of dark and light chaos, and noted that his method was unfamiliar to him. Frustratingly, Zen did not know the method by which the furnace of dark and light could be created. Nevertheless, that did not signify that it was, necessarily, untraceable. With enough time to cultivate the truth of dark and light chaos, he would finally become able to destroy that furnace. It was a testament to how complicated the energy of the truth crystal was that despite all his gifts and talents, Zen hadn't yet been able to master it. Additionally, as it involved the topmost secret of the chaos, it was verging on impossible to use the truth crystal to obtain this knowledge. Suddenly, number 9527 threw up its arms, its eyes widening in realization. I remember, it yelled, almost making Zen jump. I know of another way. If we cultivate the ways blending energy and reproduce the energy of the great unity, we should be able to then cultivate all the truths within the chaos. Ha, it trailed off, as if in disbelief at itself for not having thought of this earlier. Zen, however, rolled his eyes in exasperation. He knew that number 9527 was making a joke at his expense. It was nothing new, after all. Indeed, all the clues pointed to one conclusion: it was near impossible to obtain more truth crystals in the short term. They had to come up with a long-term plan. There must be a reason why the Chaos Ancient God left his blood to Zen. If the truth crystal could only be used in this way, it really didn't help Zen much. Fortunately, Zen could keep using the falling star palm to maximize its power. If he succeeded in cultivating the falling star palm to the fullest extent, he would be able to channel incredible power using nothing but one truth crystal. It had great potential. If he succeeded, this could become a signature move that rendered him invincible. Having made his decision, he proceeded to melt the truth crystal and absorb its essence into his body. Apart from the falling star palm, Zen also needed to merge more of the godly ways together. That, however, was not yet possible, and all he could do was bide his time, waiting for his father to return. Suddenly, he became aware of the sound of light footsteps behind him. Turning to look, he saw that the grass had been parted, and amidst it, Laquisha appeared, clothed in rippling, ephemeral silk. It's time to go home now, she said, her lips curving up into a small smile. Usually, no one disturbed Zen when he practiced here. He knew that Laquisha was not here for a trifle. There could only be one reason for her visit. Has my father returned at last? Asked Zen breathlessly. Yes, replied Laquisha, nodding. Your mother returned to the fairy palace with Geoffrey, and they asked me to tell you, she added. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's go, said Zen, full of anticipation. Without further ado, Zen approached Laquisha, took her hand and together, they set off towards the fairy palace. Augustus of the fairy palace was always exceedingly hospitable and generous. Even low-ranked true gods were able to travel freely in the swirl forest. The ordinary monsters there would not touch them if they happened to meet. As long as they didn't provoke them, the monsters would stay away, making it a very safe place. Before long, Zen and Laquisha had arrived at the fairy palace. As soon as they entered, they were greeted by a tall, heavy-set man of middle age. His eyes shone like two marbles, framed by a pair of ebony straight eyebrows. He gave off an air of wisdom and authority. It was Zen's father, Mike. Father. Zen greeted him with a broad smile. As he observed his father, he couldn't believe that the man he now saw before him was the same man he had seen dying all that time ago. The rebirth in the universe was equivalent to giving one a second chance at life. The dead would come back strong, and wiser than before. When Zen had entered, Mike had been talking to Harold while Sword Chen, Hallett and the others stood watching them. Mike's eyes lit up with joy as he saw Zen. However, Zen noticed that something was off. Father, where are my mother and sister? He asked in a puzzled tone. His mother and Joy should have been here, and even Yan had disappeared. This was indeed strange. Just now, when Zen was about to open his mouth to speak, Sword Chen gave him a wink. However, it was too late. Mike laughed sheepishly. Your mother has not changed through all those years. Don't worry, I'll talk to her later, he said, looking rather embarrassed. Although Mike's explanation might have seemed vague to an outsider, Zen understood perfectly what he meant. Even though Lorena had gone through so much, she still wouldn't allow herself to like Joy. After having returned to the fairy palace, Lorena hadn't made things difficult for Joy. Nevertheless, Joy refused to be outshone by her. Zen had felt the weight of their conflict on the atmosphere of the fairy palace. As soon as Augustus sensed the arrival of Zen's father in the swirl forest, he alerted Lorena to it. Without delay, Lorena had proceeded to tell Laquisha to, in turn, inform Zen. After that, she returned to the fairy palace with Jeffrey. However, as soon as she had entered the fairy palace, she had seen Joy crying in Mike's arms. This scene made Lorena so angry that she turned right around and left, with Yan following in her wake. Not now, Zen said with a sly smile. It doesn't matter, said Mike casually, waving his hand. Harold, Sword Chen and the others were obviously struggling to keep their faces straight. They nodded to show their agreement with Mike, while holding back their laughter. Mike was their master, and thus it would be disrespectful to joke with him. It was a privilege that Zen, as his son, seemed to have. In fact, Mike had something important to tell Zen, so he had chosen not to go after Lorena. It was imperative that he be there when Zen arrived. I went back to the floating island after I had left the universe, he said to Zen. The holy being of the Bai clan let me know that the floating island of the Dongfang clan has been robbed by the Han clan. Zen and the others all raised their eyebrows in surprise. This was unexpected news. I suspected that Samuel would take action, but I didn't expect him to be so quick, said Zen pensively. Really, why were you suspicious of Samuel? What clue did he give that he might do something of the sort? Mike asked, flabbergasted. He had briefly spoken with Zen when they were in the Ray Tree. They had been in a great hurry at that time, however, so their exchange had been short and many details had remained unclarified. Zen then recounted the details of the trip to the Abyss Demon region to his father, not failing to mention Gregorio's miraculous reincarnation. Mike remained quite surprised when he finally learned the truth. Ian told me that Samuel had vowed to re-establish the alliance of powerful clans in the Hall of Holy Beings. The other holy beings, naturally, paid no heed to his words because of his lowly rank. To add insult to injury, he was humiliated by Woodruff. His plan had collapsed for the time being, Mike said with a frown. Re-establish the alliance of powerful clans, repeated Zen thoughtfully. Zen, Harold and Hallett all exchanged glances, wondering why Samuel had acted as he did. Indeed, they would have to fight the Yellow Emperor guards one day, and the alliance of the powerful clans had been originally established by them. It was obvious what Samuel wanted. Chapter 2451, Breaking the Mixed Element Seal. Harold pointed out the crux of the matter. It is impossible for the holy beings to favor Samuel, because the holy beings of the alliance will never let him go. Nicholas had been operating in the Time Sea for years. To have survived for that long, he not only relied on his strength but also on mutual interest and prestige. After the revival of the holy beings belonging to the alliance of the powerful clans, such as the Mu clan and the Leng clan, they would exact their revenge on Samuel. However, Mike shook his head and said, I'm afraid the situation is far different from what you thought. Those holy beings have come back to life before me. They allegedly gathered on the floating island of the Han clan some days ago, but they didn't take any action. Herald and Sword Chen raised their brows slightly in askance. Zen said, only one person can suppress the anger of the holy beings of the alliance of the powerful clans. Mike nodded. As expected, Zen was quick to react. At that moment, Herald also understood. You mean that Yellow Emperor Guard? They call him Master Hamish, Zen said. Hallett inquired, you mean to say that the Yellow Emperor Guards want to utilize Samuel? Mike nodded with a frown and said, Nicholas is dead, so the Yellow Emperor Guards can't place their hope on him anymore. If, as you said, Samuel has taken control of the Abyss Demon region, then the Yellow Emperor Guards will need him to remove the mixed element seal. That is our biggest problem. He continued in a serious tone, Hamish is the weakest among the Yellow Emperor Guards. The mixed element seal that imprisoned him was not complete, so Nicholas could release him. If the other Yellow Emperor Guards are released by Samuel, the consequences will be disastrous. Mike, Holy J, and Bromley had only taken Hamish into account when they formulated their plan. Mike knew nothing about the other Yellow Emperor Guards, he only knew that their strength far surpassed that of holy beings and that as adversaries, they were invincible. Noticing the dark look on Mike's face, Harold and Hallett glanced at each other. Then, Harold turned to Zen and said with a smile, haven't you told your father the news? What news? Mike asked, confused. The way that Harold said it, the news seemed to be able to affect the whole situation, but was that even possible? I didn't have enough time to tell you in detail back in the prison on the Ray Tree. Back then, Mother and I were trapped underground. Zen proceeded to tell his father what had transpired outside the Divine Land. You mean to say, the reinforcements of the 9 Li race are outside the Divine Land? Mike had always been a calm man, but his raised voice at that moment betrayed his elation. He knew exactly what it meant. That is correct, replied Zen. Good, that is good, good. Standing in the middle of the hall, Mike repeatedly murmured, good, and let out a long breath. He looked at his son with a meaningful look in his eyes. He, Bromley, and Holy J had racked their brains to make a plan in the evolutionary universe. They had pinned their last shred of hope on Zen in order to resist Nicholas. However, what actually happened was completely different from what they had foreseen when formulating their well-thought-out plan. After all, the whole situation was dynamic, any slight deviation could cause massive changes in the end result. Even though Mike was good at planning, it was impossible for him to predict all potential scenarios and have everything under control. What he did not count on was that Zen messed up the plan of the alliance because of a measly mouse. This unforeseen circumstance caused Nicholas's premature demise even before the growth of the other godly geniuses. Neither did he expect Gregorio to be reborn and eventually replace Nicholas in controlling the Abyss Demon region. However, what surprised him the most was the fact that Zen had left the Divine Land and brought back those masters at the other shore realm. We should go and meet up with them, said Mike, but for now, I'm going to see your mother. With those words, he left. Zen and the others watched his receding back with smiles on their faces. It would be difficult for him to solve the problem of Lorena and Joy. On top of the lofty tree, Samuel and Hamish stood on a branch with their hands clasped behind their backs. Below them, Pascal sat cross-legged, black energy flowing around him continuously. Why is the mixed element seal so powerful? Not even you can remove it. Who set such a powerful seal? Asked Samuel curiously. He felt a sense of disquiet. Surely the one who was able to establish such a strong seal must have the ability to kill the Yellow Emperor Guards, right? With a faint smile flirting with the corner of his mouth, Hamish explained, the mixed element seal is, of course, formidable. A man named Harper Yuan brought us here and activated the seal, but he did not fashion it by his own strength. The mixed element seal had always been in the Divine Land, and he only activated it. As a matter of fact, the seal was designed by Chiyu himself, so it is extremely powerful. The seal was designed by Chiyu. Samuel exclaimed in shock. Nicholas learned about the source world through Lorena, so Samuel also knew a few things about the subject. For one, he knew that Chiyu created the Divine Land. Such a mighty being was simply beyond his imagination. Hamish nodded. My brother guessed that the only means to remove the mixed element seal lay in the Abyss Demon region. It appears that he was right. In the past, he had tried every means to forcibly remove the mixed element seal, but his efforts proved to be futile. The black energy flowing at the tip of Pascal's finger rolled toward the sphere before him. Gradually, the energy eroded the exterior of the sphere. It could only leave minute cracks each time, but the mixed element seal would not be able to withstand the continuous damage for long. In a day, a pit as thick as an arm had appeared in the center of the mixed element seal. After 2 days, the pit had become much deeper. 3 days later, the center of the mixed element seal was incomplete, and the pit was all but touching the person inside. Just then, Xavier said triumphantly from inside the mixed element seal, "All right. Now, ask him to make way for me." Samuel nodded. Pascal stopped, jumped slightly, and distanced himself from the sphere. Soon after, they felt a strong, domineering aura emanate from the sphere. It was as if a gigantic beast was struggling to get out of the seal. Crack! With a loud cracking sound, a fracture appeared in the center of the sphere that held Xavier captive. After sounds of breaking, and several loud thuds, the mixed element seal finally succumbed to Xavier's power. The eroded middle part of the seal completely shattered. A solid figure emerged from the mixed element seal and shot up at an incredible speed. "Ha ha, after so long, I'm free at last." Xavier's wild laughter boomed through the sky with such strength that even the top of the lofty tree was swaying. He had been suppressed while imprisoned for so many years. Now, he was full of excitement as he savored his long-awaited freedom. Chapter 2452, The Princess. Xavier arched through the sky in a large circle before dashing towards the lofty tree. Hamish and Xavier had completely different characters. Hamish had rarely revealed his true strength in the presence of others over the years. He had even disguised himself as an old man of true god realm, hiding anonymously in a small divine city. Even Nicholas only knew Hamish as a powerful master of the other shore realm. But then he had had no concept of the power that the other shore realm masters possessed. Hamish had always maintained a low profile. Compared to Hamish, Xavier was at the extreme end of the spectrum. Crack! The moment he descended from the sky, he landed powerfully on the solid trunk of the lofty tree. The North Star region had already been reduced to a wasteland, and the lofty tree had come to resemble a dead tree, though the core was still alive. Without that life force, it would have been impossible to keep the mixed element seal working. It was no mean feat, even for a holy being, to break the strong main trunk. But as Xavier stomped down on the desiccated trunk, a crack appeared and spread through the surface of the main trunk. It was as if the bowl itself would break if he had exerted even a little more strength. What a strong aura! Sensing the aura emitting from Xavier, Samuel was both shocked and awed. It was clearly the aura of the truth of godly way. The holy beings had always pursued the truth of godly way. Even if they could only claim an abridged one, they still practiced it tirelessly. Samuel had previously seen several different truths of godly ways, but he had never before encountered such a powerful one. "You are excellent." Xavier patted Samuel's shoulder and said, "You are also good. Better than that scumbag, Nicholas, at least." Hearing the reproach of Nicholas, Hamish frowned slightly. Hamish had been a staunch supporter of Nicholas for many years, so needless to say, he had felt close to Nicholas. Hearing Nicholas's name being tarnished by name-calling so soon after his death left Hamish feeling quite upset. However, out of this group of Yellow Emperor guards, Hamish was the weakest, and he held the lowest rank. It was improper for him to rebuke a superior or volunteer any comments. Samuel smiled and said, "Holy Nicholas seemed to be the only one who had attained the consummation of truth of godly way. He stood in the front rank among the holy beings. If Holy Nicholas is scum, then surely the rest of us lesser holy beings are much worse than that." Hamish could only glance in surprise at Samuel, understanding his intentions behind these words. His words sounded quite modest, but in fact, he was telling the Yellow Emperor guards that he hadn't even attained the complete truth of godly way. He was asking for a reward. Upon hearing the brave words, Xavier laughed and said, "The truth of godly way that Nicholas mastered is the truth of dark and light chaos, which Layton had passed on to him. When his seal is removed, you can ask Layton to pass it to you. That's a minor thing. If you have enough time, you will eventually step into the sea of truth. But whether you can successfully cross it, that's hard to say." Hearing this news, Samuel was overjoyed at the opportunity. In fact, Samuel was quite clear where Nicholas's truth of dark and light chaos came from. However, what Layton had given to Nicholas was a special Sanskrit word. Layton had taught a special method to Nicholas, which allowed him to channel the truth of dark and light chaos from the Sanskrit word. Samuel had seen that Sanskrit word in his probing of Nicholas's memory, but he remained clueless to the meaning of it all. So it was unlikely that he would discern the meaning of truth of dark and light chaos from this Sanskrit word. Now, Xavier had easily agreed to his request, but Layton kept mum. So Samuel seized the chance and cupped his hands towards the mixed element seal, which trapped Layton, and asked, "Master Layton, would you kindly pass the truth of dark and light chaos to me?" Layton, who was in the sphere, replied flatly, as Xavier has said, this is a minor thing. Samuel's eyes twinkled with hope. He said, we'd better remove the seal as soon as possible. Soon afterwards, another black light emanated from Pascal's hand. Leaving the divine land was proving not to be an easy feat for the true gods. Above the time sea, dozens of huge universes were scattered in the sky. It was a very dangerous journey for anyone to rashly barge into the holy being's inner worlds. Even if one made a substantial detour to avoid colliding with the universes in the sky, there was still a strong layer of space law at the top of the sky to contend with. It was a challenge, even for top-ranked true gods, to break through this layer of space law. Consummate true gods and demi-holy beings had the ability to break through it, but no one would dare do that. Except for the holy beings, anyone else who dared to step outside the divine land would die. This was something that all the true gods knew. However, if holy beings wanted to leave the divine land, it was comparably quite easy. There were only 2 steps: enter their universe and leave their universe. With the help of Mike, Zen, and Lorena returned to the evolutionary universe. Calculated by the time of the evolutionary universe, he had already been gone for more than 200 years. This was not a long time even for Soul Sea Realm warriors. Zen thought of his friends in the universe. Seeing the expression on his son's face, Mike smiled and said, you take me to see those other shore realm masters first. Once we return, I'll take you to travel the universe. Zen nodded, feeling somewhat more at ease. With a wave of his hand, Mike built a space channel that stretched to the top of the universe. The 3 of them easily reached the top of the universe without any hiccups, and they stood at the zenith of the divine land. At the summit of this huge plain, they were offered an unobstructed and magnificent vista. The massive distance between created a blurry view, and they didn't see the strong masters of the other shore realm anywhere. That's the way. Zen didn't know much about the interior layout of the divine land, but he had previously observed the divine land from every angle. After confirming the location of the evolutionary universe, it was easy to deduce where Timotheus and Emily were located. Mike brought Zen and Lorena to teleport a few more times before they finally saw a huge vortex rising in the distance. That's the place, Zen said, narrowing his gaze. What a great power. When Mike saw the huge whirlpool, his eyes flashed with interest. The power contained in the whirlpool was not within the scope of a holy being to create. Buzz. When the 3 of them used the grand teleportation again and stepped out the space channel, a faint voice sounded. Last time, a reckless guy ran out and was killed. It seems that others haven't learned his lesson yet. Zen. What are you doing back here? The man speaking was Leopold. Timotheus, Ramsey, and the others were slumped down or sitting cross-legged, trying to replenish their exhausted strengths. When they heard Leopold's words, they dragged their tired eyes open with interest. They quickly noticed Mike and Lorena, who were standing behind Zen. Even though Mike was a holy being, he appeared no different from a consummate true god in their eyes. But Lorena was a different matter. They instantly recognized her blood body at a glance. They knew without a doubt that this was not something from the divine land. They were now confused. Who would be willing to sacrifice themselves and use the furnace of dark and light in order to cultivate this precious body? Zen, who are these people? Timotheus asked immediately. This is my father and mother, Zen said with a broad smile. They wanted to see you. As before, they ignored Zen's father completely. Instead, they all stared in awe at Lorena. Your mother? Then she must be. Leopold was the first one to understand who she was. Chapter 2453. 6 Pattern Blood Storing Seeds. The Jade Toad Mountain was a blessed place full of spiritual energy, and it was also the core area of the royal family of the 9 Li race. Houses were built in a neat arrangement on the hillside. Back then, during the monsoon season when buckets of rain had poured down from the sky, a light film had been activated. That film of light around the Jade Toad Mountain had protected all the people and houses from even a single drop of rain. It was during this heavy downpour that Lorena was born. The 9 tribes of the 9 Li race had celebrated her birth for 3 months. Obviously, Chiyu, the Grand Chieftain, had loved his youngest daughter very much. At that time, although there were many conflicts between the 9 Li race and the Yellow Emperor race, the overall situation had been stable. As for Lorena, she had continued to win the hearts of everyone around her as she grew up. Leopold had not yet been exiled at that time, so he had known of Lorena's existence as well. However, he had not been a highly ranked member of the 9 Li race, so he had never gotten the chance to meet her in person. This was the first time that he had ever seen her. Get up. You don't need to be so courteous to me. I'm afraid I'm no longer the honored princess, said Lorena indifferently. Of course, she was happy that she had at least been reunited with her husband and her children. The situation seemed to be turning around for the better. However, all of the members of the Nine Li race in the Divine Land were gone, and she didn't know the situation of the Nine Li race in the Source World. What about the Grand Chieftain? And what about those 9 Li guards? She didn't dare to think about these matters at all. Timotheus, Leopold, and the others slowly stood up. No matter the situation, you will always be our princess, Timotheus said firmly. Staring at the 9 Li guards, Lorena forced a smile. No matter what it was, she felt grateful to them. The truth was, these 9 Li guards were so powerful that they could return to the Source World at any time and get a handsome reward by joining other major forces. However, even though the influence of the 9 Li race was declining, they were still on Lorena's side, and loyal to the 9 Li race. Such loyalty was rare. Princess Lorena, right before I was exiled, the Yellow Emperor race was about to have a battle with our race in Guilt Town. I wonder how that turned out, Leopold said. He had already heard from Zen that the 9 Li race had lost the battle, but he still wanted to hear the truth directly from Lorena, even if it brought back some bad memories for her. The battle in Guilt Town was a twist of our race's fate. Our race was defeated in that battle. Even my father was injured, Lorena replied with her head down. Grand Chieftain has always been much stronger than Yellow Emperor. And the 9 Li guards are more powerful than the Yellow Emperor guards. How was our race defeated? Timotheus asked with a frown. He had always thought that the 9 Li race was too powerful to be defeated by any other race in the Source World. You're right, but in Guilt Town, our 9 Li race didn't just have to face the Yellow Emperor race, they also had to face the Divine Farmer race. Lorena shook her head sadly. What? Timotheus's jaw dropped in shock. None of the 9 Li guards could believe what they had just heard. The Divine Farmer race was situated in a remote place, and it never allied with or fought against other races. Moreover, it had a few conflicts with the Yellow Emperor race as well. So why did it choose to ally with the Yellow Emperor race? Leopold murmured. Although these people had been away from the Source World for so many years, they were still familiar with the conflicts among the big forces there. The members of the Divine Farmer race were famous in the Source World for their kindness and righteousness. It didn't make sense for them to have attacked the 9 Li race. Lorena shook her head helplessly. I don't know either. My father didn't tell us the reason. He just asked us to leave the Source World. Even if Grand Chieftain created the Divine Land and asked you to leave, he must have sent guards to protect you. How were the Yellow Emperor guards able to kill all of our warriors? Ramsay said in disbelief, but after a nudge from Timotheus, he realized that he had overreacted. I'm sorry, I'm not challenging Grand Chieftain's arrangement. Still, it didn't make sense. The Divine Land was protected by Harper, Lorena answered after mulling it over for a while. Upon hearing this, Leopold couldn't help but butt in. Harper, the 3-star 9 Li guard. He is too weak. I don't think he is qualified to protect you. Ramsay and Timotheus had never heard of Harper, but Leopold knew him. Harper was a smart but weak man. He was a relatively well-known military counselor in the 9 Li race, but in terms of fighting capacity, he was far from powerful. Anyway, no matter how awful the situation in the 9 Li race had been, there should have been several strong warriors assigned to protect Lorena and the Divine Land. After all, Lorena was Chiyu's beloved daughter. To protect her, it was reasonable to send even 81 mages, or 5-star 9 Li guards like Timotheus. Leopold's words caught Lorena off guard, and she didn't know how to reply. That's true. Why did father arrange things this way? She wondered. Just then, she felt a broad arm rest on her shoulder. She turned and saw Mike smiling at her. If the aim was to save the 9 Li race's bloodline, the best way to do it would be to put all the people of the race inside the inner world of a mighty warrior and ask that warrior to run away, wouldn't it? It's the most convenient way. The chaos is so vast. How would Yellow Emperor be able to find that warrior? Aren't I right? Everyone, including Timotheus and Ramsay, was taken aback at Mike's words. Until now, although the 9 Li guards knew that this holy being was Lorena's husband, they hadn't paid any attention to him. They only had respect for Zen and Lorena. Mike's words, however, made too much sense for them to ignore. You were right, Timotheus admitted, nodding slowly. It wouldn't be a problem at all for another Shore Realm warrior to keep all the members of the 9 Li race in their inner world. But Chiyu didn't do that, which means that he must have secretly released the Divine Land into the chaos. No one else knew about it, continued Mike. Even if he secretly released the Divine Land, he still could have sent mighty warriors to protect it, Leopold retorted. And then, did he build the Divine Land only to save the 9 Li bloodline? or so that the members of the 9 Li race can live there happily. If that was the case, Chiyu should have had a better choice, said Mike. You seem to know something, Timotheus commented, staring intently at Mike. Ever since the sacred race disappeared, the divine land had been occupied by the later-born divine citizens. Then, outstanding people like Nicholas, Mike, and Bromley had gradually come into being. However, they no longer belonged to the 9 Li race, and they didn't have Chiyu's blood. The divine land was a huge relic for these people. They cultivated from a low-rank true god to a holy being, slowly exploring the various secrets of the divine land. Even if they hadn't found out everything about the divine land, they had their guesses. The origin of the divine land and the disappearance of the sacred race were all secrets that had been left behind in the ancient times and spawned various legends. It was not until Lorena's appearance that these secrets had come to light. It was only then that Mike had learned about the origin of the divine land, and that there was actually a wider space outside the divine land where other shore realm warriors, who were stronger than even holy beings, existed. However, there was still one question that puzzled Mike: what was Chiyu's purpose of creating the divine land? The most important things in the divine land aren't the soaring snake sword, the forbidden areas, or even the divine land itself. The most important things are the 2 seeds and the infinity ruler, Mike said indifferently. Seeds, infinity ruler. The 9 Li guards were confused. My father gave me these 2 seeds and the infinity ruler. These seeds are 6 pattern blood storing seeds. One of them stores the bloodline of our 9 Li race, while the other stores the bloodline of the snake goddess race. It's said that Snake Goddess personally gave the seed to my father, Lorena explained. Then, she looked to the other side where Emily and the others from the Snake Goddess race were sitting. Until now, they hadn't participated in the conversation at all since it was regarding an internal matter of the 9 Li race. But after hearing that one of the 6 pattern blood-storing seeds had been given by the Snake Goddess race, Emily opened her eyes. Chapter 2454, The Speculation. The blood-storing seed was an intricate way to preserve blood. There was a tricky conundrum that had arisen with every great clan in the source world continuing their bloodlines. Since the blood was passed down from generation to generation, over time it became diluted. For example, Lorena was an esteemed member of the 9 Li race, while Mike was an outsider. So it was inevitable that their children's blood would be diluted. However, this crisis was abridged by the blood-storing seed. With the blood-storing seed, descendants of the clans would be able to ensure the purity of their blood. However, there was a class system in play for the blood-storing seed. For common people, an ordinary blood-storing seed would suffice. In the source world, the 1 pattern and 2 pattern blood-storing seeds were quite commonly and easily acquired, but the 6 pattern blood-storing seed was more of a rarity and harder to find. Therefore, when Emily heard Lorena mention the 6 pattern blood-storing seed that had been given by the snake goddess, her ears instantly perked up. This meant that one of her children had been gifted with the blood of the snake goddess race. If the 6 pattern blood-storing seed had really been made by the snake goddess herself, then this child had a chance of possessing the purest blood of the snake goddess race. Of course, there was no doubt that Zen and Yan were Lorena and Mike's children. The blood-storing seed carried the blood, which was its special ability. The blood-storing seed of our race was used on Zen, right? Timotheus asked, staring wide-eyed at Zen. Mike nodded. Small wonder then that the bloodstone broke into pieces. Leopold smiled woefully. They had tested Zen's blood strenuously at the Sky Spirit Bone Tower, but they hadn't known its limit. They only knew the imperial-grade bloodline flowed in Zen's veins. Now it would appear that they had underestimated him. What is the Infinity Ruler? Timotheus probed Mike. What is your view on the merging of godly ways? Mike asked hesitantly. The merging of godly ways? You mean the theurgy that Zen has been cultivating? I don't know who instructed him to cultivate it, but I dare say it will prove a failure. Leopold shook his head disapprovingly. Timotheus supported his opinion by saying, that is a road to nowhere, and it will prove useless. The others nodded in agreement. In the source world, everyone knew this to be a truth. Merging the godly ways was problematic, if not futile. After most of the true gods had reached their consummation, they saw no point in wasting time by merging other godly ways. Instead, they invested their time in cultivating the truth of godly way. This was how they attempted to reach the other shore as soon as possible. Would it surprise you if it was the Grand Chieftain who instructed my son to cultivate it? Mike asked. The 9 Li guards were stunned by his revelation. Leopold widened his eyes and said, even if it was by the Grand Chieftain's order, he must have been mistaken. He had also previously tried, and he had been forced to admit that he had failed. It was no secret that Chiyu had once tried unsuccessfully to merge the godly ways, and many 9Li members knew this. But I think that Chiyu had discovered a way to successfully merge the godly ways. I even think that your race is embroiled in this mess because of the merging of godly ways. As you just said, the divine farmer had no motivation to help the Yellow Emperor, yet despite this, he still helped the Yellow Emperor to defeat the 9Li race. Perhaps someone opposed the 9Li race's mastery of merging the godly ways. Hence, they asked the Yellow Emperor to join hands with the divine farmer. Chiyu never completely mastered the theurgy of merging the godly ways, so he built the divine land and gave the 2 seeds and the infinity ruler to Lorena. Mike related his guess. The infinity ruler. The infinity ruler contains 3,000 scales. Each scale represents a godly way, making it a convenient way for Zen to merge the godly ways, explained Mike. But surely that's just speculation, whispered Ramsey in awe. With a faint smile hovering on his face, Mike said, such speculation offers a direction, but we still have to prove it. Isn't that right? Yes, quite right, Emily confirmed. If I were Chiyu and really had the means to recreate the godly ways' great unity, I would also take the risk and might even ask the snake goddess to join me. But where is this person who has the other 6 pattern blood storing seed now? May I see that person? Yan was Mike and Lorena's daughter. She had never had anything to do with the snake goddess race. However, since Yan had inherited the blood-storing seed that had been personally made by the snake goddess, her blood was also an unusual anomaly in the snake goddess race, so Emily felt that to be of great importance to her. Yan is still in the divine land, said Lorena. Emily nodded, her mind running off with different ideas, and she fell silent as she brooded. Do you think my father's assumption will prove correct? Zen, who had kept silent throughout this discussion, suddenly asked number 9527 in the vaults of his mind. When he had been outside the divine land, he had heard them mention many times that it was untenable for one to merge the godly ways, and the great unity would never be rebuilt, ever. No, 9527, Timotheus, and Fuxi had all said the same. But Zen still had the notion of leaving things to chance. After all, this was the gift that his father gave him. What if he succeeded? It's not correct, answered number 9527, immediately denying Mike's assumption. It is a certainty that the great unity has only existed once ever since the chaos formed. If Chiyu could really rebuild the great unity, it would mean that the truths could be acquired through learning, which is simply impossible. Zen pursed his lips and said, what are the odds? Isn't there even a 1 in 10,000 possibility? Forget it. It's virtually impossible, number 9527 replied, snorting derisively. Fine, Zen shrugged indifferently. He still wasn't planning on giving up, despite no 9527's conclusion. He was determined to fill the 3,000 scales marked on the infinity ruler. Of course, no one was aware that Zen was talking with no. 9527. After hearing Emily's response, Timotheus and the others found it difficult to further doubt things. After all, Mike's assumption sounded somewhat reasonable. Zen once mentioned those Yellow Emperor guards. What are they like now? Timotheus asked. The 9Li guards never busied themselves with the bizarre idea of Grand Chieftain. But they were concerned about the real threat. The Yellow Emperor guards were potentially the biggest challenge in the Divine Land. Someone has taken control of the Abyss Demon region. It won't be long before they break through the mixed element seal, Lorena reported. Timotheus' eyes flashed as he offered, in that case, you must stay outside the Divine Land, and we'll protect you. Emily agreed, right. Since you can't oppose the powerhouses at the other shore realm, you can place your family members in a small world and bring them here. You can return once we are able to enter the divine land. She longed to verify Yan's blood. Although she was in the dark about what the snake goddess thought, she felt obliged to verify it since Yan possessed their race's blood. Besides, she was willing to stay here because of Zen. I'm afraid that will not be possible, Mike said, shaking his head. Why not? Timotheus asked, frowning. He felt this was the safest means available to them. Zen has a mission of his own now. The mountain of holy beings is about to emerge, Mike explained. Chapter 2455, Order. Timotheus kept his eyes on Zen as he thought for a while. I implore you, at least let the princess stay here, under our protection, he finally said. He didn't know how to sway Mike's mind, but knew that the least he could do was to ensure the safety of the princess. Lorena, however, had made up her mind. I will stay with my husband no matter what, she said firmly. Timotheus had failed. The 9Li guards couldn't keep Lorena here against her will, and Mike, stubborn as a mule, was impossible to convince. However, Mike had promised that in the event that he encountered an insurmountable danger in the Divine Land, he would immediately send Lorena and the others away to safety. Even after all discussion had ended and Mike had left with his family, Timotheus remained rooted to the spot, his expression sulky and obviously disappointed. Seeing his face, Emily smiled and reached out a hand to pat him on the back, reassuring him. Sometimes you should just relinquish control and let things run their course. And it might even be what Chiyu planned from the start, right? Perhaps you are right, Timotheus said, more to himself than to Emily, nodding. Anyway, we have to hurry and move as fast as possible. The speed at which the space barrier recovers is much slower than we imagined. So we should be able to break through the space barrier a year earlier than we expected. At most, we will need 3 years, said Emily, pursing her lips. Timotheus did not like the sound of that. If the Yellow Emperor guards manage to escape from the seal, the situation on this ship will change dramatically. 3 years is too much time. We need a faster solution, Timotheus said, shaking his head. Let's go with what we know, rather than spend even more time thinking up a new plan. And think about it, not so long ago we thought it would take at least 5 years. 3 years is a huge improvement, isn't it? Emily said in an optimistic tone. As soon as Emily had finished speaking, a figure emerged from the giant vortex before them. It was a warrior of the other shore realm from the snake goddess race. This warrior was obviously tired, having exerted a significant amount of faith energy. Now, it is my turn, Timotheus exclaimed, and he charged forwards, into the mouth of the vortex. The space barrier between the Divine Land and the Chaos could, given enough time, regenerate on its own, so they had to move quickly before the window closed again. They would have to work in shifts, one working while the other rested. Otherwise, all their previous efforts would have been in vain. Back in the Divine Land, on the lofty tree, the last of the orbs finally split open. A beam of purple light shot out of it, stopping as it reached the top of the lofty tree. The man who had emerged from the orb was wearing a purple robe, a golden ribbon tied around his waist. His skin glimmered faintly in the daylight, and his eyes were clear and piercing. Layden, you are free now, congratulations. The remaining Yellow Emperor guards similarly congratulated their leader, one after another. Layden stood on the top of the tree, and as he gazed far across the land and towards the horizon, the corners of his mouth curved up into a smile. After they had accidentally found themselves aboard this ship in the past, they had spent many years here. Now that they had been released from the seal, however, they all had mixed feelings. Layden was the last one to be released. As all of the mixed element seals had been removed, the entire lofty tree began trembling violently. The strong sense of death in the North Star region had completely disappeared. Signs of new life sprung up everywhere, and the bare branches of the lofty tree began to blossom, sprouting numerous little buds. If one observed the tree from a high point, they would be witness to a wondrous sight, seeing the tree transform from a barren stack of branches to a vibrant mass of blossoms. After many years of barrenness, the North Star region began to bloom with new life. Not before long, the region would become home to a vast number of beings. Layden, please let me destroy this cursed tree, Xavier said through gritted teeth, his face full of anger as he saw the tree erupt with new life. Having stayed trapped by this tree for so many long years, he resented its new life and beauty. He wished to see it gone, a pile of ashes. Don't be so irrational. What fool gets angry at a tree? Harper was the one who trapped you, not the tree. If you want revenge so badly, why not find Harper and give him what he deserves? Layden chided. He seemed at ease and rational. Haven't we already promised to help Samuel? Let's go to the floating islands first. Hearing this, Samuel bowed to him in respect. A day passed. By then, Samuel had returned to the Hall of Holy Beings once again. Standing in front of the hall, Samuel called loudly, "All holy beings, present yourself in the Hall of Holy Beings as soon as possible." When his voice reached the other holy beings, they began to whisper amongst themselves disgruntledly. "Here comes Samuel again. It's only been a few days since the last time he came here to pester us. He must love embarrassing himself. Does he think he is on par with Nicholas?" Despite their complaints, however, a number of the holy beings heeded his command. Even though holy beings of the Alliance had little respect for Samuel, they did respect Hamish, and they knew that he was the one behind Samuel's actions. As much as they resented following Samuel, they wouldn't dare defy another Shore Realm warrior. Buzz. The first one of them to appear in the Hall of Holy Beings was Zeke. As soon as he appeared, he saw the 5 people standing in a row behind Samuel, and his expression transformed immediately. In the face of this direct evidence, he could no longer deny that Samuel was the one who had liberated the other Shore Realm warriors. Murphy, Clark and other holy beings appeared shortly after Zeke in close succession. Just like Zeke, their faces filled with shock upon seeing the row of powerful warriors of the other Shore Realm standing behind Samuel. Soon, all the holy beings from the alliance of the powerful clans had gathered in the Hall of Holy Beings. Layden took a casual glance at the holy beings who had just arrived and their abashed expressions. "Are these holy beings all members of the alliance?" he asked Samuel without taking his eyes off them. "Yes, sir," Samuel said with a nod. Layden smiled, and a gentle aura spread out from him, blowing through the hall like a refreshing spring breeze. "You, followers of Nicholas and members of the alliance. You all helped us get rid of the mixed element seals." As he spoke, he flicked his fingers, shooting out a shower of golden lights which floated in the air before Clark, Murphy and the other holy beings. The holy beings' already confused expressions became even more puzzled as they observed the golden lights suspended in the air before them. Murphy took a small step forward, squinting at the light. "Is this a Sanskrit word?" he asked after a few seconds of staring at the light. "This is the complete truth of dark and light chaos, transcribed for you to understand. All you have to do is inject your spiritual sense into it," Layden replied. The holy beings all remained wide-eyed, their expressions vapid. However, as the information finally sank in, their expressions transformed into those of realization. Subsequently, they proceeded to channel their spiritual sense into the golden lights before them. Once the task was complete, however, this previously confused crowd of holy beings erupted with tumultuous joy. It was widely acknowledged that Nicholas's strength was far superior to that of any other holy being, as he was the only one who had mastered the truth of dark and light chaos. Although Nicholas had obtained many other advantages in the Sea of Truth, the other holy beings would definitely have a chance to become as powerful as him if they, too, gained entrance to the Sea of Truth. Standing in the middle of the hall, Samuel furrowed his brows slightly. He didn't expect Layden to be so generous as to provide those holy beings with the complete truth of godly way. However, Layden's motives were not purely altruistic. He was aware that this was the most effective way to bribe the holy beings into convincing them to work for the alliance and remain loyal to it. The holy beings all expressed their gratitude to Layden, who waved his hand casually with an expression of feigned embarrassment. "Soon, we will be like a family, so you don't have to continue with all those ceremonies and formalities. But there is one other thing. Tell me, why aren't the other holy beings here? Surely you lot are not the only ones," he said. "Those other holy beings are not part of the alliance," Samuel explained. "It's not that easy to subdue them or order them around." I see," said Layden, scratching his chin. A smile still lingered on Layden's face, however. With a slight bounce, he jumped upward and stayed suspended in midair. "Summon them to me," he directed Samuel. Samuel understood the innate meaning of Layden's words. "All holy beings, I order you to come to the Hall of Holy Beings immediately. Come now or suffer the consequences." "Really?" scoffed one of the holy beings. "I'd love to see those consequences. Bet they are terrifying," the person continued, who turned out to be Gibson, his voice dripping with sarcasm. He had always been quick to mock Samuel in the past, and was not changing tack now. He would soon regret his words, however. As soon as he had finished speaking, an overwhelmingly intense truth of godly way spread, like an electric mist, from the Hall of Holy Beings and extended across all the floating islands. The moment Gibson felt the truth of godly way, the mocking smile slid off his face as if it were a block of butter on an icy ledge. "It's the truth of eternal sword intent," he exclaimed, gasping with surprise. The truth of eternal sword intent possessed by the Sword Clan was an incomplete version. This truth of eternal sword intent, however, was released by a powerful warrior at the other Shore Realm. They were on completely different levels. Chapter 2456, An Easy Punishment. The power of the aura was incomprehensible by the holy beings. Besides Gibson, Woodruff, Ian and the other holy beings, who didn't belong to the alliance of the powerful clans, were all taken aback. "Who is this guy? As far as I know, Hamish, who is the main sponsor of the alliance, doesn't practice the truth of eternal sword intent. Have the other Yellow Emperor guards been released?" The holy beings were astonished. The demi-holy beings and true gods could also feel the overwhelming pressure. All the disciples of the powerful clans raised their heads to look at the sky. It felt like the ubiquitous aura was piercing through their chests with a kind of indescribable force. Everyone present in the Hall of Holy Beings, including Clark and Murphy, sucked in their breaths when they felt Layden's aura. Layden took 2 steps in the air and hovered above the middle hall, looking down at everyone. Soon, He seemed to have spotted someone in the distance. With his fingers pressed together, he pointed downwards. The truth of eternal sword intent accumulated on his fingertips, turning into a bright white sword light, and hit the floor of the Hall of Holy Beings. Boom! The sword light immediately penetrated the floating Hall of Holy Beings, leaving a small round hole on the floor. The sword light went straight through the Hall of Holy Beings, the floating island of the Dongfang clan, and the floating island of the Sword clan. Bang! The cyan tiles of a 3-story building on the floating island of the Sword clan were hit and they crumbled like a pack of cards. Then the sword light rushed towards Gibson. By the time Gibson realized what happened, it was too late for him to teleport himself. Before he could step into the space channel, the thin sword light went through his head all the way to his feet. The sword light did not stop there. It rapidly impaled the floating island of the Sword clan. Leaving a long trail in the air, it penetrated through the floating islands of the Tang clan and the Leng clan and landed in the time sea at a certain angle. Master Gibson, Holy Emperor Gibson, how are you? Are you okay? When the members of the Sword clan rushed into the building, they saw that Gibson was standing motionless. He could not move at all. The disciple standing in front touched Gibson and he fell to the ground with a thud. The group of disciples was stunned. They could not hear the conversations in the Hall of Holy Beings. They could only feel the powerful aura. Nobody could figure out why Gibson had been killed on their floating island just like that. I have killed the holy being of the Sword clan, but with the support of his universe, he can be brought back to life. This is just an easy punishment. The next time I attack, you will die once and for all, threatened Layton. Hearing his words, all the holy beings turned pale. He killed Gibson with a single move. He has terrifying strength. Gibson is one of the top 5 holy beings. He is powerful. None of that matters. The important thing is that he can kill holy beings forever and they will not be able to revive. Holy beings were not afraid of being killed because they would be reborn in less than 2 months, but what Layton claimed to do had shocked them. If he could really kill the holy beings and destroy their universes, then they would no longer be immortal, which was their greatest gift. This brought back unpleasant memories of what happened several years ago to the holy beings. At that time, Nicholas was leading the alliance of the powerful clans to capture Lorena. Several holy beings of the alliance were devoured by the lethal fire magma. No one knew what Lorena had done to the holy beings at that time. They were unable to be reborn, and their universes collapsed too. Sensing the fear of the holy beings present, Samuel put on a smug smile. He spoke once more, now it's time for you all to show up, right? Do you want me to send special invites to you all one by one? His warning had the desired effect and as soon as he finished speaking, the holy beings appeared in the hall. They didn't take his words seriously before, but they didn't dare to disobey him seeing he had a powerhouse to support him. Meanwhile, in the War God Hall of the Moon Clan, Woodruff was frowning and his face was gloomy. Hallett had visited the Moon Clan before. He wanted to join hands with the Moon Clan and the Sword Clan to fight against the alliance of the powerful clans. That was a smart move on his part, actually. It didn't matter how powerful Nicholas was, united they could beat him. The prospect of finishing Nicholas convinced the Moon Clan to join hands with the Sword Clan. Once the battle with the alliance of the powerful clans started, the Moon Clan would fight without hesitation. However, things had changed. Nicholas had actually died in the Abyss Demon region, and now their new opponent was powerhouses at the other shore realm. Just then, someone appeared in the War God Hall with a flash. Seeing the shadow, Woodruff cupped his hands and yelled, "Shall we go to the Hall of Holy Beings, brother?" The person that Woodruff was addressing was Moon Lee, the leader of the Moon Sect. The Moon Clan was made up of 3 forces, the Moon Sect led by Moon Lee, the War God Hall led by Woodruff and the mysterious Soul Building led by Vanessa. Among them, Vanessa was the only one who wasn't on the floating island. She was staying on the hidden tree in the south. Moon's face darkened. It was natural for anyone who had to face such a powerhouse to feel defenseless. "Yes, let's see what Samuel and that powerhouse have in mind and then we can plan our strategy," said Moon. "But we can't just surrender to Samuel this way. Woodruff gritted his teeth. "There's no need for us to fight Samuel. Let's find out their purpose first." A glint of smartness flashed in Moon's eyes. The Moon Clan was ranked 3rd among all the powerful clans above the Time Sea. The 3 holy beings of the Moon Clan believed that they were by no means weaker than Samuel, so they were unwilling to surrender, but right now they had no choice given the current situation. "Let's go. Buzz, buzz." The 2 of them stepped into the space channel and instantly appeared in the Hall of Holy Beings. The moment Samuel saw Woodruff, his mouth twitched and he had a wicked smile. "Woodruff, you finally show up." Woodruff stood there sullenly and did not speak. That day, you asked me what I relied on to challenge you. Is this powerful enough? Samuel sneered and looked at him aggressively. Woodruff was not used to being taunted like this. He had always defied power. In fact, he was the one who had the guts to oppose Nicholas. The war god Hall had never been afraid of war and death. The blue veins on his forehead protruded. Just as he was about to refute, Moon stopped him. He cupped his hands and yelled out to Samuel, "Samuel, why do you summon us to the Hall of Holy Beings today?" Chapter 2457, The Maze. The Moon Clan was led by the Moon Sect. Moon was the strongest among the 3 holy beings of the Moon Clan and was said to be ranked top 3 among all the holy beings. But normally, he seldom showed up in public, and the daily affairs of the Moon Clan were generally handled by Woodruff. Compared to Woodruff, Moon kept a low profile as if he did not exist. Samuel gave Moon an indifferent glance and didn't continue to embarrass Woodruff. He said loudly, "I'd like to discuss the re-establishment of the Alliance of the Powerful Clans. The Alliance of the Powerful Clans has been existing for a long time now, and we are aware that you are a member of the Alliance. Now Holy Nicholas has died. If the holy beings of the Alliance are willing to recognize you as their new leader, that will be a good thing." "Congratulations, Samuel," said Moon in a respectful tone as he cupped his hands toward Samuel. Samuel said with a slight smile, "In addition, I require all the powerful clans to join the Alliance." The holy beings outside the Alliance frowned slightly when they heard this. Samuel had mentioned it before, but they just treated it as a joke. They did not realize that Samuel would really force them to join the Alliance. However, with those powerful warriors at the other shore realm backing him up, it was another story. Moon, on the other hand, calmly answered, "The purpose of the Alliance is to unite the holy beings. Would it be too much to force all the holy beings to join it?" Samuel's gaze swept over Woodruff and Marsh, one of the holy beings of the Sword Clan, and then said in a cold voice, "It's surely too much for those who don't want to join the Alliance. As I have said before, there will only be one alliance of the powerful clans above the Time Sea in the future. If you don't want to join, you can leave the Time Sea." The expression on Moon's face slightly froze at his words. He tried his best to stay composed after hearing Samuel's words. Meanwhile, the other holy beings also looked gloomy. Samuel was really rude and unreasonable. After he was in power, he became even more cruel and vicious than Nicholas, which made circumstances worse. "It's a big deal to join the alliance of the powerful clans. There are many factions in my clan. I don't have the final say. I still have to discuss this matter with my advisors and constituents. Can I give you a reply another day?" Moon said. Under such a circumstance, he did not dare to refuse Samuel directly. "Of course you can," Samuel responded as he looked at Marsh intensely. Since Marsh came to the Hall of Holy Beings, he had had a long face. A holy being of the Sword Clan had just been killed, so he was furious. He did not know if he could handle his feelings well, but he composed himself. "What's your reply, Marsh?" Samuel asked. Marsh managed to squeeze out a smile on his face although it seemed like he was in pain. "The same as the Moon Clan. I have to go back to the Sunrise Tree. I'm afraid it will take some time before I give a reply." Samuel looked around the other holy beings and said, "So all of you can't give me a reply today either?" "I have to make an explanation to my clansmen," said one holy being. "The elders of our clan are stubborn. I'm afraid I have to spend some time persuading them," said another. Quote. Samuel sneered inwardly. He wanted to break the faces of these holy beings, but he kept calm. Everyone knew that the holy beings were the core of their clans, and every word of them carried weight. Obviously, they made up an excuse to buy time as Moon did. Samuel sneered, "All right, I'll give you 1 month. I hope you won't let me down. Otherwise, you don't have anyone to blame except for yourselves." The holy beings cupped their hands to Samuel and left the Hall of Holy Beings one by one. Just as Marsh was about to leave, Samuel said, "Marsh, wait a minute." Marsh asked in a long and wary face, "What's wrong?" "Well, Master Layton wants to talk to you," Samuel said with a faint smile. Layton looked down at Marsh and asked proudly, "The non-combat zone on the Sunrise Tree was built with the truth of goodwill and malice, right?" Marsh's heart sank at his words. The Sword Clan didn't know the origin of the non-combat zone before. It was not until Harold's and Zen's appearances that they knew the secret. Although Harper had never appeared in the Sword Clan, he had built the non-combat zone on the Sunrise Tree, which was considered the natural barrier and also one of the footholds of the Sword Clan. So his role was not underestimated. "We don't know what the truth of goodwill and malice is," said Marsh. Although he tried to lie, Layton looked at him as if he really knew the truth. Layton laughed and said, "It's the truth of godly way that Harper cultivates. I have confirmed that he has been hiding under the sunrise tree over the years. Please take me to him." It's not appropriate. We the Sword Clan." Marsh was trying to come up with an excuse to refuse Layton. But Layton interrupted him. "Harper has trapped us for so many years, and we have to take revenge on him. I am not discussing with you. The non-combat zone can block the holy beings, but it can't block us. If you don't agree, I will not think twice to eliminate the Sword Clan from the Divine Land." His voice was very calm but intimidating, as if the second largest clan in the Divine Land was only a small fly in his eyes. Marsh gritted his teeth with worry. He had no excuse, so he had no choice but to give in to Layton's threat. While the people on the floating islands were deterred by the danger, the fairy palace was enjoying a peaceful atmosphere. After the trip out of the Divine Land, Mike was finally relieved. He had thought previously about how to fight against the alliance of the powerful clans, but now, he had to think about how to spend the next few years safely. "Father, you told Master Timotheus and the others that the Mountain of Holy Beings is about to emerge and I have my mission. What do you mean by this?" Zen asked intently. At that time, what Mike said had totally confused him. He needed clarification. Even if he became a holy being, his strength wouldn't change significantly. After all, their opponents were the Yellow Emperor guards at the other shore realm who were known for their strength. "I don't know either," Mike answered with a smile. A strange expression appeared on Zen's face when he heard his father's answer. When Mike saw the confusion on Zen's face, he continued, "Even your mother doesn't know why your grandfather made this ship. I can only guess it. Do you still remember the maze on the true path?" Zen nodded quickly. The last part of the true path led Zen to enter an enormous maze that seemed like no one could ever get out of. It took him 4 long months to leave the maze after countless desperately failed attempts. Since then, the maze was left in his mind magically. Saul once told him that the maze was left by the sacred race and that it was very important. It was copied by his master using his sharp memory. The real maze was many times larger than what Zen entered. He had been in the Divine Land for so long but had never heard of the maze here. Now that his father mentioned the Mountain of Holy Beings and the maze at the same time, Zen was thrilled. His eyes lit up as he asked, "Father, do you mean that the maze is in the Mountain of Holy Beings?" Mike looked at Zen with appreciation and nodded. "Yes, it took your master a lot of effort to copy it." Chapter 2458, The Choice of the Moon Clan. "What's at the end of the maze?" Zen asked curiously. Mike shook his head and said, "I don't know. I've never been to that maze. Does mother know anything about it?" Zen tried again. Mike smiled and explained, "The 9 Li race doesn't have a thorough understanding of the Divine Land, so your mother doesn't know much about it either. But Bromley believes that the key to controlling the Divine Land lies in that maze." Zen raised his eyebrows at that. The Divine Land was independent ever since it was set free by Chiyu. If they could reign over the Divine Land in place of Chiyu, then neither the union of the powerful clans nor the other shore realm enemies would be a problem for them anymore. This sure clarified some things, but Zen still couldn't figure out one thing. A world in the universe would eventually develop its own will as time passed by. The Divine Land had been out of Chiyu's control for a long time now, but it didn't seem to have developed its own will yet. Zen couldn't fathom the reason behind this. Zen was deep in thought when he suddenly heard Augustus's voice coming from the outer hall. "Some holy beings have come into the Swirl Forest." Holy beings? Mike's face darkened at this information. "Who are these people?" Hallett asked. "It's Moon from the Moon Sect and Woodruff from the War God Hall," Augustus replied. Hearing this, Mike walked out quickly and ordered, "Let them in." Moon and Woodruff were surprised when they saw Mike. His revival from the universe was known only to the holy being of the Bai clan, while the rest knew nothing about it. However, they soon recovered from their confusion. After all, the Dongfang clan had lost its past glory. Now, although the floating island of the Dongfang clan still remained above the time sea, the clan was doomed to decline. As a result, they could no longer imprison Mike. "Long time no see, Moon and Woodruff," Mike greeted them amicably with a smile. Moon saluted to him and said, "Congratulations. I didn't know that you've already returned. I am so glad to see you again." Back when the Luo clan was in trouble, both the Sword Clan and the Moon Clan had chosen to be silent spectators instead of offering to help. After all, at that time, the Dongfang clan was quite prosperous, so the Moon Clan and the Sword Clan didn't have the resources to protect anybody other than themselves. They were meeting Mike today after that episode, so there was a trace of apology in Moon's tone. As for Mike, he didn't mind that too much. In fact, if he was the leader of the Moon Clan, he would have done the same. "So what brings you here today?" Mike asked. Moon looked at Hallet and sighed. Some days ago, Hallet visited our clan to discuss an alliance. We had decided to wait and see the Sword Clan's attitude. But now, the situation seems to have changed. Sensing that there was an undertone in his words, Mike asked, what exactly happened on the floating islands? Samuel has gone too far. He wants to rule over the entirety of the Time Sea. He is relentless in his pursuit. Woodruff said angrily before Moon could get a word out. The entire Time Sea? Mike was confounded. That's an impossible mission for him to undertake alone. Could it be that Samuel set all the Yellow Emperor guards free? Moon explained with a sad sigh. Having gained the support of those Yellow Emperor guards, how could the other holy beings go against him? Zen, Hallet, Harold and the rest became gloomy. It all happened too soon, didn't it? Harold frowned and said. Samuel has just taken control of the Abyss Demon region, but he released the Yellow Emperor guards so soon. We never expected it, Hallet commented, still appearing to be in a daze. However, Zen was clear that since Samuel could gain access to all of Nicholas's memories, he would definitely replace him in a plot. It was not difficult for Samuel to do this in a short time. After all, he knew everything that Nicholas knew. One of the Yellow Emperor guards, called Layton, killed Gibson and said that he has the means to kill every holy being with no chance of them being reborn ever again, remarked Moon calmly. He described what he had seen in the Hall of Holy Beings. Samuel required you to reply within a month. And all the holy beings have to join them. Mike said bitterly. He has gone too far now. Woodruff was furious. Then what do you plan to do about this? Mike asked Moon with a look of determination in his eyes. The Yellow Emperor guards released from the mixed element seals were merciless. This would mark a watershed in the Divine Land's history. If the holy beings enlisted in the alliance, irrespective of being reluctant or willing, it would mean that they were against the Ninely race and would become their potential opponents. I don't care what you think, Moon. I swear that our war god Hall will never join them. Woodruff said firmly. Seeing Woodruff incensed like this, Moon smiled wryly. I didn't say that the Moon clan will necessarily join them. We still have to discuss this with Vanessa, don't we? She won't listen to you, Woodruff said shortly. Vanessa was the head of the mysterious soul building. Moon looked calm on the surface, but he was under great pressure inside. Faced with a group of invincible opponents, surrendering seemed to be the only way for him. However, the Moon clan was an alliance of 3 forces. They had agreed long ago not to join any more forces. To think of it, leaving the Time Sea doesn't seem to be a bad thing, Mike suddenly said. Moon shook his head. I don't think so. If Samuel could fully control the Time Sea, it would mean that we would also have to give up the entire Divine Land soon. In time, there will be no room for us to live. Moreover, I don't think that he will spare us if we don't obey him. If he doesn't let us go, we will prove to him that defeating us is no easy feat. Woodruff said angrily. Moon glanced at him indifferently and asked, do you think you're a match for those Yellow Emperor guards? His words rendered Woodruff speechless. Strength was everything in the Divine Land. Since Samuel was now backed by the Yellow Emperor guards, the rest of the holy beings were destined to be slaughtered if they chose not to submit to him. Actually, we only need to wait for another 3 years. We'll see the results by then, Mike said suddenly. 3 years, Moon repeated in surprise. Is it possible that you have figured out a way to deal with them? The holy beings of the Alliance were aware of the other Shore Realm warriors from outside the Divine Land, but the other large clans still didn't know of their existence. Mike didn't get straight to the point and tell Moon everything. Instead, he said, we do have a way of defeating them. As for what kind of method we will use, we won't be able to inform you until the intention of the Moon clan is clear to us. If the Moon clan decided to join the alliance of the clans, they would also be treated as the enemy. Mike, don't worry, I have already made my decision. It's out of the question for me to join the alliance of the clans and to surrender to Samuel, Woodruff answered firmly. Despite his sincerity, Mike still cupped his hands and said, please visit the Swirl Forest again after the Moon clan makes a final decision. I'll give you the answer then. Chapter 2459, Entering the Sea. The 2 holy beings of the Moon clan were sent out of the fairy palace by Augustus. Mike sighed. I hope they make the right choice. I won't be surprised if they choose to submit to Samuel, said Harold. Most holy beings would be open to compromise in order to maintain their status and influence in the Divine Land. But it may not be the best option, Mike said with a faint smile. Under Zen's leadership, Mike had seen many other Shore Realm warriors outside the Divine Land. He now understood the great gap between these 2 forces and hoped that the Moon clan would make the best choice available. It looks like we also have to withdraw the disciples from the floating island of the Gu clan, Hallett said, rather sadly. But I don't know where Master is now. Back then, Mike had been imprisoned by the Dongfang clan, and not long after that, Bromley had left the floating island. Mike had returned safely, but Bromley had disappeared without a trace. Mike shook his head and laughed. He is very interested in the chaos, and exploring the chaos takes too much time. Fortunately, there are not many people in the Gu clan. Even the fairy palace can accommodate them. Members of the Luo clan don't need to come over at the moment. Now that the Yellow Emperor guards were out in the open, there was no safe place in the entire Divine Land. The only places that could come close to blocking them were the forbidden areas, and even that might not be able to keep them away completely. I will arrange for inquiries to be made about the situation on the floating islands, Hallett said, nodding. The entrance to the swirl forest was not completely closed to the floating islands, which meant that they could still get some information about the floating islands. Jeffrey poked his head into the living room, smiled and said, "Grandpa, you promised me you would exchange something for the truth of godly way." Mike's worries disappeared the moment he lay eyes on his grandson. He flashed Jeffrey a smile and said, "That's for sure. It looks like I still need to rely on my grandson." Jeffrey had learned that Joy had imparted the truth of cultivation nature to Mike, and had immediately come up with an idea. After all, Jeffrey had deciphered the truth of godly way, and he had the right to exercise his monopoly over it. And because of this, Jeffrey had worked out a deal with Mike. Zen had originally planned to leave the fairy palace and continue to absorb the godly ways from the godly way tablets according to the pictures in his mind. But with the appearance of the Yellow Emperor guards, he had no choice but to put it off. They had to observe the situation on the floating islands until everything was stable. During this period, Zen chose to cultivate in seclusion. After he became a consummate true god, it meant that he had finally reached the end of the godly way. He had mastered 99% of the truth of cultivation nature. The reason why he was cultivating in seclusion was to reach the perfect state of the truth of godly way and create the truth boat. I entered the sea of truth last time with my physical body. What should I do if I want to enter again? Zen asked. No. 9527. I don't know, number 9527 answered. Zen was surprised. How can you not know? He asked desperately. According to the ancient god cultivation method, one would enter the sea of truth through the body tribulations. But I don't know what you should do. Maybe you need to be grilled over fire, number 9527 replied with a smile. Zen's mouth twitched. No matter what, he had to break the shackles of the truth of godly way. Zen sat cross-legged, and the truth of cultivation nature that Jeffrey had copied came into view. The words appeared before his eyes, one after the other. At first, Zen didn't feel any pressure and recited quickly and smoothly. But as the words kept going past Zen's eyes, the pressure increased with every minute. Zen's soul power had already far exceeded that of an ordinary consummate true god. He would be outstanding even in the source world. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't read the last few words of the truth of cultivation nature. It was not because his soul power was weak. Zen wasn't about to faint, at least not at the moment. In the source world, the warrior cultivating the truth of godly way usually created a space and showed the truth of godly way through the environment. Many consummate true gods usually gathered together to comprehend the truth of godly way. In that way, warriors could often practice and master it in a short time. But since Zen wasn't in that position right now, he had to rely on his own efforts to make a breakthrough. River, with, clear, stop, nothing. Zen's teeth chattered as he recited the words. His soul had entered an extreme state and it felt like there was an invisible high wall in front of him. He couldn't cross the wall, try as he might. So he resorted to using raw, brute force to cross it. This was an immense pressure on him. When Zen had cultivated the truth of cultivation nature, number 9527 hadn't guided him or given him any advice. In theory, the truth of godly way was endless. There were only a few talents in the source world who had figured out the method of cultivation, and others had just followed suit. Zen could only cross the tall wall before him alone to make a breakthrough. But number 9527 could see that Zen was trying to break through by using his soul. This method was foolhardy. If someone else tried to do it, they would have already fainted countless times. This might even damage the soul of light. But if he managed to pass through it, it would greatly benefit him. 1 day passed, 2 days passed, 5 days passed. Zen was exhausted. The soul power was being consumed for a long time. He quickly swallowed several pills to replenish his soul power. His efforts had yielded some good results. Only 6 words of the whole truth of cultivation nature had not been read and comprehended. The picture of the Sea of Truth was clearly displayed before him. Zen had been to the Sea of Truth, but he had entered it with his physical body last time and the sea had looked different. On the 10th day, Zen was able to recite 2 more words. Only 4 words remained. On the 15th day, only 2 words had not been recited. But by this time, Zen had consumed too much of his soul power and fell to the ground. Even if Zen had had strong soul power, it would still have been used up. But the moment he woke up, he continued to recite the truth of cultivation nature. Benevolent. On the 20th day after he had begun to cultivate in seclusion, Zen gritted his teeth and spat out the last word of the truth of cultivation nature. Zen had finally merged his soul of light with the truth of godly way. The truth of cultivation nature emitted from his body with a bang. It wrapped Zen up in a blue picture. He found himself sitting on a boat floating in a sea of stars. Everyone in the fairy palace felt the abnormal movement in the training tower. The training tower that Bromley had built could block almost all fluctuations, but it could not block the aura of the truth of godly way. Everyone's eyes were focused on the training tower. It looks like Zen has made a breakthrough, Augustus said, his lips curling, jealousy and disappointment lacing his voice. Zen had cultivated the truth of cultivation nature earlier than others, but he had been busy bustling about all these years, without much time to cultivate. Augustus on the other hand, had spent a lot of time comprehending the truth of cultivation nature in the fairy palace but had only mastered half of it. He found it more difficult to cultivate after he reached a higher level. He thought it might still take him a long time to reach the consummate level of the truth of godly way. Chapter 2460, The Legendary Man. This is the truth boat. The boat formed by the truth of cultivation nature was like a real object that could be touched. Zen reached out and knocked on the railing. An audible echo sounded. He knew that this was not in fact real. Even his own body was turned from the soul. The truth boat was probably something that was imagined in a certain method. This sea. The last time Zen had stepped into the Sea of Truth, he had seen a red sea. This time, however, the sea was blue. The sea was emitting a vast aura, as if all the mysteries of the chaos were gathered within it. With a ghostly howl, the sea before him rolled up suddenly and a gust of wind blew over. Zen felt a chill run down his spine. The chilly air blew into the soul of light, penetrating into it and causing Zen to shiver. No wonder one can cross the Sea of Truth only after turning their soul into a soul of light. If one's soul is not powerful enough, the wind will blow at it and smash it into pieces. Only now did Zen understand why it was so difficult for the people who had come before him to advance in the Sea of Truth. The difficulty of passing the Sea of Truth with the soul was probably much higher than with the physical body. A splash sounded from his left, like something had fallen into the flowing water. A boat had appeared out of nowhere and fallen into the Sea of Truth. Zen had experienced it and immediately understood that this person might have just comprehended the complete truth of godly way as he had done. But Zen had no interest in communicating with anyone. An idea flashed through his mind, and the boat at his feet began to move forward. As soon as his boat moved forward, the boat behind followed closely. As he stood on the truth boat, Zen felt like he was in an ice cellar, his soul power being consumed even more than usual. He slowed a little after he had traversed quite some distance. To his surprise, the boat behind him also slowed down. Zen was confused, but a clear voice sounded from behind him. "Could you please move a little faster?" At this, Zen smiled faintly and responded, "You can overtake me if you want to move faster. Why do you follow me? My soul is not as strong as yours. I can save some soul power by following you," the voice said. Although Zen couldn't see the warrior's face, he was somehow attracted to her pleasant voice. She must be a beautiful woman, he thought. "Can you really save soul power by following me?" Zen asked curiously. Of course. The powerful warriors usually gather together to cross the Sea of Truth. It's more difficult to cross the sea alone. It is a coincidence that we met here and I'm glad about that, the woman said, with a smile in her voice. She was cottoning up to Zen in order to keep following him. Zen smiled. He recalled that when he had first entered the Sea of Truth, all the boats were arranged in order. Okay, Zen said, agreeing to her following him. He sat down and concentrated on driving the boat forward. As he sped up, the boat behind him accelerated as well. They had moved forward for a while when the warrior behind him asked, "Why are you crossing the Sea of Truth alone?" "You are also alone, right?" Zen asked. I'm different," the woman replied. "What's the difference?" Zen asked. "I'm unique. Those guys don't deserve to be with me, the warrior said, a hint of pride in her voice. Zen smiled as he said, it doesn't matter if you are unique in this world. You still have to cross the sea like the others. But most people won't be able to reach the other shore in their whole lives. I am destined to reach the other shore, she answered confidently. Really? Many congratulations, Zen said sincerely. He had a vague idea about who this woman was. She was probably a powerful warrior of some great force in the source world, or an inheritor of a certain strong master. He could tell from the aura of her soul that her soul power was on par with his. Hiding behind his boat was just a ruse to save her soul power. The woman continued to follow Zen as they moved forward. She asked questions from time to time, wanting to figure out Zen's identity and background. Zen lied and made up an identity. Do you know that there was a freak in the Sea of Truth not long ago? The woman asked. A freak? Zen asked, taken aback. I don't really believe it, but they say there was a guy who didn't rely on the truth boat and swam naked in the Sea of Truth with the intention of crossing it. That's incredible, isn't it? The woman said. Swim to the other shore. Zen's jaw dropped as he realized that the woman was talking about him. Had this news spread throughout the source world? It was indeed shocking to see a guy use his physical body to swim in the Sea of Truth. After the disciples of the Oneness Sky Palace left the Sea of Truth, they immediately reported this to the elders of the palace. But the source world was vast and it took a long time for some rumors to spread through it. Once the senior members of the Oneness Sky Palace came to know about this, they ordered the disciples of the palace not to tell anyone about it. So the news of the strange swimmer had only been spread to a select few within a small range. But the woman enjoyed a special status and had heard the news from her clan's elders, which was why she paid attention to it and accorded it some importance. Yes, isn't it horrible? The Sea of Truth can turn all souls of light into nothingness. That guy can actually swim freely in the sea. I wonder where he comes from, the woman continued to exclaim. I don't think he is too far away. Within this period of time, I've spent 2 soul bamboos in order to break through the shackles and enter the Sea of Truth. Maybe I can meet that guy. It is indeed terrifying, Zen responded. Only after one's soul entered the Sea of Truth would they understand that the Sea of Truth was dreadful. Their soul would be wiped out instantly if infected with the water of the Sea of Truth. It was easy to guess how the others felt when they saw someone swimming almost casually in the Sea of Truth. Zen and the woman chatted and as time passed, they traveled quite a long distance. They were close to the end of the first section of the Sea of Truth. It was then that dozens of truth boats appeared on the other side of the sea. They were not moving against the current, but heading straight for Zen and the woman.